Hey, it's episode 1 of Le Savage Show. I'm your host, Stéphane Paulin. And for the first episode, I had the pleasure of talking with Dru Onyx. Dru is a professional wrestler and the head coach at Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo. I've known him for about 5 years. I was a student of his at Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo, and when it comes to my wrestling career, I owe a lot to him. Throughout the years, we became great friends, and every time we get together, we always end up having great conversations. And this time around wasn't any different. We spoke for about 3 hours. We went into his rapping career, his football career, and obviously his wrestling career. We just had a great conversation, and I'm really happy that he accepted my invitation to be the first guest on Le Savage Show. So I won't keep you waiting any longer. I really hope you enjoy episode 1 of Le Savage Show with Dru Onyx. So I thought to myself, who better for the English side of my podcast, the episode 1, have Dru Onyx on. So thank you for being the first guest on Le Savage Show.
Not a problem, man. It's an honor and pleasure to be on it, man. And if I have a story to tell, I have a couple of them, so I'll be more than happy to express and let people know a little bit about me.
Listen, I've known you for 5 years now, just about 5 years.
I'm so sorry.
No, I am extremely grateful and blessed to have met a man like you. But you know, we've sat in cars, we've traveled all over Quebec, even Ontario, together with the wrestling. I've been at your wrestling school so many times. We've sat, we've chit-chat. I know a lot about you. I know a lot of points about you, but there's certain things that I've never sat down with you and said, let's have a conversation about this. So let's start here. 1992, Death Threat, Just Chill, Arcade. How did you get into the music business at that time?
Okay, well, I've always been an avid fan of hip hop. As soon as I first heard it back in the 80s, I remember going to New York. My parents, they are Barbadian descent. They're all born from Barbados. In fact, so am I. I was actually born in St. Michael's, Barbados. And there used to be like a Barbados House, which is a collective of Barbadians in Canada coming together and going on, trips and doing things like a group community center type thing. So anyways, they went down to New York. When I went down with them and I was a kid, that's when I got my first Walkman. I don't even think they were in Canada yet. And I bought a mixtape, and on it had hip hop. Anyway, so I've been a big fan of hip hop. And I used to always write. I'm a poet, so I used to try to write my rhymes. And how I got into rap. How I got into rap was Maestro Fresh West, who was at that time like the #1 hip hop MC in Canada. He came down to Montreal, and by then I knew his album by heart. So I went there as a kid. He was opening up for Young MC, and I was in the front row. And he saw that I was spitting his rhymes. So when it came to the song Backbone Slide, he passed the mic to me, and I kicked like maybe 4 or 5 bars on beat. Some of my friends who were there were freaking out. So when I got back to high school the next day, they're like, oh my God, Rodney, my shoot name, my government name, Rodney hung out with Maestro and was, kicking rhymes. So people were coming up to me and they're like, are you a rapper? And I'm like, yeah. And then I said, I guess I am. So then I start writing to beats. So I remember writing to the first instrumental I wrote to was from a rapper called Rakim, from Eric B and Rakim.
Yeah.
So I was starting to, trying to get my flow and stuff like that. So at that time, I was in my last year of high school, and I had an English teacher. Her name was Mrs. Wasserman. And she was no nonsense. In English, I was very good in school. So as far as English, so I used to take that, I used to be like very nonchalant, and she would always force me to step up my game. Like she would tolerate no nonsense. The bell would ring. If I was 20 seconds late or 5 seconds, she would shut the door. I'd have to go to the principal, all that kind of nonsense. So anyways, she's like, write journals. We have to write journals. So basically you have to talk about your day. And I would tell her, well, this is my first, sorry if it's long-winded, but it all
no, keep going.
Sorry if,
this is what I want.
Sorry if, we want you to write journals. So basically what you do in the day. So I raised up my hand. I said, this is the first period. So every day is I woke up, I took a dump, I showered, I ate breakfast, I came to school. Well, what is there to write? Like, you're my first period class. Like, so I got to write a journal like this for the whole. So she's like, well, what would you rather do? I said, well, I write poetry. She's like, well, write a poem every day. So I said, all right, cool. So I start writing a poem every day, and she would tear apart my poems, spelling, grammatical error, without contents, adding information that wasn't there. And I was like, whoa. And I wasn't used to that, because at that point I would write poems and my friends would think it'd be cool. And some of my friends would pay me like $5 to write a poem about a girl that they like and pretend that it was them who wrote the poem. So I thought I was pretty swift with the pen. And she's like, no, structure, on point. She forced me to step up, my game. Wow. So at one point she's like, well, what do you think about rap? I said, well, I love rap. I want to be a rapper. She said, my son's a producer and he has a studio. Why don't you go, no, not my son. My son's his roommate. Her roommate is a producer. So I got in contact with this dude. He did my first demo. We did like about 5 songs, and that helped get me going. So then at that time, the only way you can get on, there was a couple of shows, Mission at Work on CKUT. And that's where all the MCs would drop the demos to get played. It was community radio, but the Afro-Canadian contingency, all the hip-hop fans, because hip-hop at that time was still underground. So, if you wanted to get on, and I used to hear it on Saturdays from 7 to 9, all these hip-hop groups in the States and these local guys. So I had to get on. And also, there was a stigma. There was no rappers coming from Laval. I was from Laval. So if Montreal was like the Mecca, it was New York, Laval was Arkansas. It was like the boondocks. They didn't even think there was black people in Laval at that time. So I remember coming there with my demo, and they're like, what the hell is this? But one guy was pretty cool. He was like, yo, dude, he has a demo. He's from Laval. I'm curious. So he put the demo, and it was actually good. And I remember my first hip-hop show was a Sweet 16, because I had a friend who was a DJ, and he had instrumentals. So I'd go to his house to start practicing, and then I made another demo with him. And he's like, oh, I have a show. You want to do it? I'm like, sure. What is it? He goes, it's a girl's Sweet 16. So I was like, okay. So I come there, and I'm sitting by the DJ table with them, and these, they're playing all these pop songs and everything, and then he's like, well, get on. And I'm like, well, fuck no, I'm not getting on. I thought I was a rapper, but it's one thing to rap, and it's one thing to perform in front of people. So he's like, come on, do it. I'm like, nah, I play the instrumental. Give me the mic. So I'm sitting behind the DJ table, and I'm rapping. The people don't realize that it's live. They're still dancing to it until I notice that they're still. So I start getting up, and I'm starting to rap, and they notice that it's me. There's a whole bunch of people. And, they're like, play another one. I'm like, I only have this song. So I played that song twice in a row or 3 times in a row. Then this guy, Hank Sprong, who was he was a road manager for a rock group called Ep01.
Oh, Ep01, yeah, I know that group.
Right. So yeah. he was there. His daughter, it was his daughter's Sweet 16. So he's like, that was pretty impressive. Do you want to go into a studio? I said, yeah. He goes, let me manage you. I'm like, all right, cool. So my first real demo in a studio, because up to that point, my English teacher's son's roommate was a pre-recording studio. It was a nice little studio, but it wasn't a 48 track. It was it was in a building, but it wasn't a major studio, but it was still good. And then my friend had a DJ set. So my next demo was off that. But this was the first time I'm walking into a recording studio, and the drummer and the guitarist from Ep01 is there, and they're the ones that did 2 out of the 3 demos that I did that night.
Wow.
So so then he started getting me more shows and stuff like that. And then at that time, the only way I can get noticed was to be able to freestyle. And freestyle, for those who don't know, is they're able to kick a rhyme, off the top of your mind on any subject or whatever. And I was really good. So in order to get noticed and to get more studio time, I had to battle MCs, because a lot of times, in order to get more studio time, like drug dealers would like sponsor a rapper, or they would put on shows at a club and they say the winner gets 20 hours of studio time. So I would go there, because at that time, studio time was $25 to $50 an hour, and it was hard to get, especially, I'm a rapper, and they're like, whatever. So I would go get that, and I'd make my name until a record company contacted me, and I knew them through another rapper, which was kind of messed up, because originally they were going to do the album with her, but she introduced me to them, and they liked me so much that they asked her nicely, hey, do you mind if we don't work on your album? Let's work on his, and then he'll put you on. So that was Death Threat Records, and Just Chill was the album, and it was 6 songs. And what people may not know now, it is the first hip-hop album to come out in Montreal. So there was no other rap album before me.
That's quite an accomplishment, to be honest. I didn't have, obviously I didn't know a lot about that story. I just knew that you were a rapper at one point. Yeah, that you had toured with Brand Van 3000, I believe. Yeah. And all that. That's an accomplishment if you really think about it, because if you look at it now, the scene, the music scene, especially rapping or hip hop and rap, it's pretty big in Montreal. Like even on the iTunes chart, sometimes I'll look up and I have these playlists, and all of a sudden I'll get a song and it's like, this guy's singing in French. And I'm like, I look up the guy and he's from Montreal or he's from around here. So that's pretty amazing though. And you were still in high school at this point?
Yeah, I was 17. No, I was 17 when I recorded the album, 18 when it came out, 18 or 19. And I remember going to HMV and seeing my album there, and I thought it was the craziest thing. And one DJ at that time at the major HMV downtown in Montreal had a DJ that would play new music, and he didn't have to do it, but he would play that album all the time and help generate interest. And like I said, at that time I was doing a lot of shows, and I opened up for like every major hip hop group that would come out. I've opened up for Redman, I've opened up for Too Short, Far Side, Ice-T. There's a lot of groups. I'm sure I'm not. Craig Mack. I was supposed to open up for Notorious B.I.G., but he didn't make it through the border, and that was a crazy. That was a crazy situation. So Notorious B.I.G. is supposed to be coming down to Montreal to perform, and I've opened up for other groups, but Biggie was like the biggest thing at that time. So I had like grandmothers calling me to see if I can get them tickets for their grandsons. No joke, like I get this phone call. I'm like, hello. She's like, hi, I'm your father's friend. How are you? And I'm like, I'm okay. Yeah, well, I heard you're opening up for Biggie. Do you think you can get me 8 tickets for my son and his friend? I'm like, I don't even know you. Like, even my friends who were supposed to support me never came to any of my shows, whether it be locally or if I opened up. But all of a sudden, my friends would be like, yo, man, I can't wait till we're on stage with you watching Biggie. Anyway, so Biggie couldn't get to the I'm on sound check now, and we're trying to get ready. The show's about to go on in about 3-4 hours, and it's such a big hoopla, and I'm doing sound check, and I find out Biggie can't get at the border. And the promoter decides that he's not going to tell anybody. So then people show up only to find out that he's not there. And what happens was fans got irate. They weren't happy about it. And then the Montreal sent the police. So they came in riot guard. Like they were all there with the shields and everything, and they started to walk down, and everybody dispersed. But that was really crazy. But yeah, no, I opened up for a lot of groups, and then I got hooked up with Brand Van 3000. The rapper Liquid, he was a roommate with me at John Abbott College, and in fact, I was the one that kind of inspired him to rap, because one time we're playing Techno Bowl, before practice, and he's like, "Yo, man, I write poetry, man. I'd love to rap." And I'm like, "You should do it. It's just change the format." And he's like, "Really?" Anyways, he kept on. We would practice, and then he would practice on his own. Hooked up with James DeSalvio, who's the lead singer for Brand Van 3000. Contact them. They did the album and everything. What was crazy was, at that time, their producer was my producer. My producer at that time, because I moved on from one label and I was on Zubone Records. And Higgs Varbidian, he's a master producer. He's the one who produced the first album, that whole sound for Brand Van 3000 Glee, on Capitol Records. Capitol or Sony? I think it was Sony Records. Anyways, I'm in the studio with him, and we're working on something, and I see this poster, and it's like this this rabbit sniffing a deer's ass. I said, "What the hell is this? And what's Brand Van 3000? And Brand meant this is the shit. Van, the shit's moving, 3,000 at 3,000 miles per hour. I'm like, that's outrageous. I think he goes, "It's a group. I just finished their album. You want to hear this song?" So I hear this song. I'm like, "Yo, dude, that's a hit." And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Dude, that has to be the single." He goes, "Really?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna tell James." And the song was "Drinking in LA." I heard it before it was even out or whatever. And I'm like, "Yo, dude, this is gonna kill." So James heard that I liked it so much. He borrowed my demo that I was there. He was listening to it and he liked it. And then at one point, I think, he contacted me to do some shows, and I did some shows with him and Liquid, and it was really crazy. And at one point, they were in Germany, and I couldn't go because I was still playing semi-pro football for the Montreal Condors for the Empire Football League. And I get a call, and it's a call from them in Germany, but I missed the call. So I was like, "What? They're calling me from Germany? That's messed up." So I contacted him. I called his cell number or his phone number, and there was a message. So I left a message. I'm like, 1, 2, 3, the place to be as you walk to see most definitely is the R, the K, the A, the D, the E, dropping poems on your telephone. It goes a little something like this: "The tears of a clown make the whole world laugh. Ha ha. Anyways, peace." He liked it. He put it on the album.
Holy shit.
That snippet, he put it on the album. So I get a call from Autogram Select, which was the record label that was the real record label, but the album did so well, it then went to Sony. Anyways, they contacted me and they're like, "We got a check for you." I said, "A check? A check for what? Like, I didn't record with you." He goes, "Yeah. Something about a message on the phone." So I went there, they played the track, and they're like, here's a check. So I had an opportunity to work with those guys, and those guys were cool.
You mentioned John Abbott College and football. You played some football through college, semi-pro for one league or a few different leagues. Tell me about football. Tell me how football helped you, mold you into the man you are today. Because I know for me, martial arts, when I started martial arts at the age of 24, it gave me the tools necessary to be who I am today, or to help me push me in the direction, the discipline, and all that stuff. How did football at that time help you become who you are today? Because I'm sure, because we all know football is fucking hard. It's really hard. It's hard mentally, physically, and it's such a crazy sport, such a fun sport. But how did football basically help you become who you are today?
It definitely gave me structure, discipline. It taught me teamwork, camaraderie with your fellow teammates. But at first, I didn't realize it. For me, I got into football by mistake. I liked football, but I wasn't a football fan, or I didn't even have dreams of being a football player. It's because I got kicked out of baseball that I joined football. What happened was I was playing like baseball, little league, from the age of 7 to like 15, and there was an umpire that was giving me a hard time, was striking me out even when I wasn't being struck out. He had an issue with me. So one game he just struck me out, and I'm not saying that I didn't deserve some of the strikes, but I'm telling you, some of the pitches were just crap. And even to the point that the parents' kids were like, what the hell? Anyway, so I turned to him. I said, hey, this is crap. Like, this is messed up. And he's like, yeah, whatever. So I see him the next day. So the next day, at that time, I was a day camp counselor. And I'm bringing the kids out from the pool. And he's going to the pool. And I see him on this little bright red moped. And he's parking his moped. And he's getting out. I'm like, hey, you're that bullshit umpire that fucked up my world. We have a game today. You're the umpire. You better call it straight. And he gave me like the biggest gas face. He's like, he was a kid too. Like I was 16. He must have been 16 too. But he's an umpire. So we have a game at Dussablon Park, which is just a block away from my house. And I'm playing the game, and the pitcher's throwing balls, and he's calling them strike. And at one point, like the third time I'm up, I'm like, if you call another strike, it's on. So the pitcher throws this lopsided, like the ball like slid onto the plate. Everybody's all like quiet now because they have to say you have to walk him. He looks everybody in the eye. Strike 3, you're out. So I lose it. I start doing the Tommy Lasorda. I'm start kicking the sand. I'm swearing at him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're kicked out of the game." I'm like, "Kicked out of the game?" I pull his mask and I let it fly.
Oh Jesus!
And he's like, "Yeah, well, you're gonna be suspended. You're gonna be suspended for a game, not this game and the next game." I'm like, "Oh yeah." So I walk out. I'm beside the cage. You know, like when you're batting, there's that cage, so if there's fly balls, it doesn't hit into the crowd. Yeah. He had there was a bike rack, and his moped was there, this bright red moped. And I go all the way back, and everybody's like, what's he doing? So he sees me heading to his moped. He runs now to be like, what's going on? I pick up his moped, and I throw it at him. Everybody's like, oh. And I'm like, yo, fuck this noise. And I go home. So I get a call from the president of baseball, like Laval Little League. And they're like, did you have an altercation with so-and-so? I'm like, yeah, he was treating me wrong. He's like, Rodney, you can't do that. I'm like, okay, all right. So what's the noise? He's like, so I'm thinking I'm going to be suspended for a game, maybe 2 games. He's like, you're banned. I'm like, what? He goes, that's assault. You can't be throwing people's mopeds at them. You're lucky he's not pressing charges. So I was like, I said, what do you mean? So I'm suspended till when? He's like, for 8 years. I said, but Little League goes up to only like to 16. What are you talking about? He goes, that's it. You will never play in Laval again. So I was like, what? So I put down the phone and I stay quiet because my parents upstairs and I don't need them. They're very strict. They hear that, you know, their son Rodney's throwing mopeds at people. I'd get a whipping. So I'm leaving, and my boy Joe Kolzak, who lived on my street, who was a bomb-ass baseball player, started to get into football. So he's like, yo, I heard what happened. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what am I going to do now? He's like, why don't you play football with us? So I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, come to the game. So I come to the game, and the coach has a hard on when he sees me because I'm 15. I'm 6 feet by then, and I'm 175 pounds. So he's like, yo, have you played football before? I'm like, here's a joke. Till this day, I don't even know how many players are on the field. Till this day, I have no love for the game other than it allowed me to abuse people and not go to jail. Like, think about it. Think about this, Steph. And I'm sure and it relates to wrestling. The correlation is the same.
Yeah.
Imagine if I'm in a supermarket and a lady's picking up a bag of grapes and I run full speed and I tackle her. I'm going to jail for a long, long time. You do it on the football field, they take you out to Dairy Queen. Like, it was like all the things that you're not supposed to do, you're allowed because you have a helmet and jersey. So I was like, what? So now baseball comes there, and they're like, yo, we heard he's playing football. And my coach is like, yeah, but do you know what he did? He shouldn't be able to play. He's violent and unruly. He goes, that's perfect for football.
That's football, fuck.
That's football. Get out of here. So when I saw him stand up for me, I'm like, I'm in. So at the time, it was just hanging out with my friends. But it was only when I had an NFL tryout, a combine, because what happened was from like Little League football, I played city ball. We didn't have high school football at that time. So you played city ball. So I played for the Laval Bulldogs. And even then, like I said, when I started, I was, I I was just good at it, just athletically. So my first year of playing football, I was outstanding lineman of the year for my team. And then from 15 years old, 175, I went to 200 pounds the next year.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So, yeah. So as a rookie, I was causing all kinds of chaos. And so I played 2 years of midget football. And what was amazing was the vets that were there, they took a liking to me. And they were all men. Like I gravitate to men's men, like ultra males. You know what I mean? Guys who are just badasses. And luckily, they've always liked me. So they would put me under their wing. So I learned how to be a man away from my father. My father showed me how to be a man and how to conduct myself. And then you have these guys who were like maybe 1 or 2 years older telling you, hey, you got to move like this. And all I ever wanted to do was to please these guys. And these guys were just crazy. So then after midget football, which was 16, 17, I then played junior football, which is 18 to 25. So it's a range of men, young men with this guy. And I was born in September, so I was always 1 year younger. Like the season started and I was always – so with these 18 and 21 or 25-year-olds, I'm 17. So – I'm being impressioned, watching these guys. And then, like I said, there was these guys that would just teach me how to conduct myself, how to be held accountable. I had this one football player, and his name was Parizo, and he played O-line, because I played D-line and O-line. And when I played O-line, I had a D-line mentality. And Parizo, he could only come out to play football games because he was in a youth boys home, because this guy used to cause chaos. So the only time he's allowed out on the weekends was to play football. To do violence. Yeah. So he would always hang out with me. And before our games, he would go and have this big pizza, extra large pizza, poutine and fries before a game. Me, I can't eat food before a game. Like, I'll throw up. So we would talk and everything was cool and everything. But so I'm like, oh, wow, this future this convict really likes me. Wow, we get on the field. I make a mistake. I get such a head slap. Do you understand? He knocked off a shade of color off my skin. That's how hard he hit me. And I was like, yo, I thought we were friends. And I learned there, it doesn't matter if we're friends, you have a job to do. And that's the same way I try to teach at my school. We could be cool, we could be kicking it, but I know that I still got to be a coach, and you still got to step up. So those are the things that I learned. I learned structure, and it's funny because I incorporated a lot of the way I teach by like the coaches that I enjoyed, Gary Adamo, and there was a few other guys. And so then after that, I got into CJEP. I played CJEP for John Abbott College, and that was different because it was like playing for 90210. It was just like these guys just played just to get a jacket. They didn't really care about the sport. And at that time, that just kind of like, whoa. And then after that, I went to Ottawa Gigi's, which was the Notre Dame of Canadian football, and undefeated season the first year, but we didn't win it all. And then the second year, we won the whole thing. And that team was so stacked that I was good, and I was a first stringer. But when you have 3 or 4 other first stringers that come all across Canada, that was the first time I was kind of put in check. Like, you're not as, even if you're as good, there's somebody there. So you learned, like, everybody's expendable. So you got to always constantly step up your game. So, and how I got to Ottawa Gigi's, because after CJEP, I played semi-pro football 1 year for the Montreal Condors. They had a semi-pro team, for the Empire Football League, and then for 3 years for Plattsburgh North Stars. So I played in the States. And then I was like first team All-Star or second team All-Star. And me and this other guy, Vince, we had a shot to go to for an NFL Combine in Connecticut. And that was the first time I realized that talent can only get you so far. If you don't have discipline, if you don't have dedication, if you don't work hard, it doesn't matter how talented you are. Because I saw some beasts, like back in the day, like, when the players used to come in to go to the gym and work out, the only time I would go to the gym was if there was a hot girl in there. Do you understand? I used to walk in there with a donut because, whatever the requirement was, like if bench press was 200 pounds, you had to do it 10 times, I would just do the 10 times. But then there was running backs that would take that same 200 pounds and do it 40 times. So I didn't know that I had to learn how to be disciplined at that point because I was still enjoying life and I was having fun. And up to that time, talent-wise, I can get by. But when I went to that NFL combine and I saw people, and Americans are different from Canadians. Like, just their mindset is different. Their hunger is different. Like at that time, like I lived in a middle-class house. Like they used to call my family the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Both parents are professionals, 2 cars, nice white house. You know what I mean? I'm living in Chambly, Laval. So it's not like, I'm starving. Like all my starving days left when I left home. And that's when I learned to appreciate what I had. So, you know what I mean? So it was a little bit of not spoiled, but life is good. And then you got this gangbanger with speed that, has like, all the cliches, like 2 kids, I remember this one running back getting grilled by his wife with a baby in hand. He's like, baby, we need this. You know that I used all our rent money to get us here. So he was on a different level of, I need to make this. Whereas I was still at, wow, this is pretty good. Like I was a visitor. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So after that, I got rocked. And one of the scouts said, oh, the thing that left an impression and made me switch was after the tryout, one of the coaches from the tryout came up to me. He goes, I don't question your intensity in your heart because you definitely have that, but I question your discipline. And I was like, wow. And since then, that was the turn. That was like, okay, I got to dedicate myself to anything that I do.
It's funny you say that switch, that discipline switch, because I remember, I think there's something about my path towards who I am today that's a bit similar to yours. Like I grew up pretty comfortable. It wasn't, I wasn't equal to everybody. I didn't have a 2-parent home. I lived with my grandparents and my mom a lot of the time, was out working. So it was really like myself, by myself, trying to learn as a teenager. And even when I left home at a young age, at 18, to live on my own, it was all like you gotta learn how to hustle. And I never had any money, so it was always like, well, where can I get my next paycheck? Oh, I can get a stable paycheck to pay rent and pay my car payments. That's all I need for now. And it's kind of like survive, like figure out how to survive. And if you can survive and then start little by little doing what you like on the side, then you can grow from there.
Yeah.
But you said something where that switch, like that discipline, where somebody might have questioned your discipline. I remember after college, I went to college. I did this small business management course, and I had this teacher, the main teacher of the course. She taught like 80% of the classes. Yeah. She was one of those businesswomen, but like tough businesswoman, like no bullshit. She wouldn't accept any bullshit from anybody. And after I graduated, a couple years later, I went back to her because I was thinking about joining the Army. My uncle was in the Navy, and I thought it was a good path for me. So one of the things when you apply for the Army is that you need some references. And I went to visit her because I thought she'd be a good reference. We had a good relationship, and she gave me a good reference. But she said, when I was meeting with her, she said, here's one thing you have to be careful, is that you're going into something where you don't do well by having someone tell you what to do and how to do it. She's like, you're a bit iffy on that part. Discipline for you is not your strong force. Plus, when someone tells you, corrects you, you kind of take it personal a lot of the time. And for me, that right there was like, I still remember that part. I still remember that conversation because it was the first time someone told me. And sometimes when someone tells you, even though you might kind of know it's a part of you, you go, oh shit, like that person was real enough to be able to tell me, like, look, I think this is a flaw of yours and you need to work on it if you're going to progress through life, not just for that. So when it wasn't until 4 or 5 years later when I walked into a martial arts school and got tapped out 35 different times on the first night on the mats, and I was humble and realized that, oh shit, you can't get everything in life just waiting for things to happen. You're not that big shot that everything is going to fall on your lap. Like, you just got tooled. One part of my brain went, well, if there was a street fight, I'd get my ass whipped. And then another part of me was like, well, this is an opportunity for me to work on those things. And through martial arts, I was able to grow. So I can kind of relate when someone, just one little thing tells you, like you was the discipline, for me was something else, and it clicks, and then you're able to kind of correct course and then go into that direction. So
yeah, but see, the problem with me is that I didn't learn right away, and not only because football wasn't my love. Like, I'm like, if I play for the Montreal Alouettes, that's cool, or whatever.
Wow.
And I love the Cleveland Browns, and my favorite university team is the Oklahoma Sooners. But like, I didn't have dreams of being it was always a rapper or wrestler. So I still didn't learn. And it's funny that you talk martial arts, because my first experience was before. I always wanted to be a wrestler, and I thought, like, there's no way to become a wrestler in Montreal because there wasn't any schools. I didn't have the inside track on who to get trained and stuff. So I was watching a lot of Pancreas, which is hybrid wrestling. And I said, okay, well, I might as well, do some submission wrestling, because that's going to be the closest thing. And on the videos, they were inside a ring. They had the the same wrestling wear, knee pads. They had shin pads and stuff. And I had a couple of friends who were being trained by this guy, Angelo, who was one of George St. Pierre's first submission coach. And in fact, George St. Pierre would come right after us. And this is in the beginning. This is before he was GSP or anything like that. But I said, okay. And the guy was the Canadian liaison for Pancreas in Canada. So I said, okay, I'm never going to be a pro wrestler. At least I'm going to do some submission wrestling. So I did that for a bit. Then I got into wrestling. But here's the story now. So I'm like, you know what? I want to get back to my martial arts background. So I decided to go to JKS, and I go to the senseis, and I'm like, and I'm feeling myself, because I just won a championship, a pro wrestling championship. And I'm an idiot. Like, I'm just like, at that time I was just like, wow, I'm full of myself, but not in a condescending way. But I walked in, I'm like, hey, listen, you'd be more than happy to have me in your school. I'm a pro wrestler who's a champion. And the guy's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'd like to join. I want to get into stuff, and I'm really serious. I'm a pro wrestler, and look. And I ran back to the car, and I showed him this big fancy belt that I just won. And he's like, all right, first class is tonight. He's like, yeah, I'll be there. So they put me in the first class, and I got stretched by every single jiu-jitsu practitioner that was there. I got my ass handed to me. So I was like, wow, I don't care like how good you are. There is always someone better. And I'm competitive. It's not like I let you just wrap my arms around my ass. You know what I mean? And the only time it stopped was because everybody was having a free-for-all. I got there, and one guy tapped me out. Then the next guy tapped me out. Then the third guy tapped me out. The fourth one, fifth one, until the bench warmers were like, oh, get me in. I want to. And I'm like, yo, fuck that. And it's only when I tapped out like the bench warmer with a full Nelson did I get some kind of respect. But at the end of the day, I was like, wow, shut your mouth, learn, and if you want to be great at anything, dedicate. So then after that, I would come back and learn. And I was always humble. Like, I wasn't ever, yeah, coach or anything like that. So, yeah, sometimes you got to be humbled a couple of times. Life has to hit you right in your face for you to be like, okay, I've learned that lesson.
I think it helps a lot. And it's messed up to say, but it's something that, especially for men, like that ego, a lot of men will never allow themselves to be humbled by another man. And that'll be something, and they'll never grow. They'll always be stuck in this position, this rut, simply because they would never allow their ego. And I think martial arts, any martial arts, boxing, whatever it is, when you get in there with someone else, you not only get humble, but you learn to leave your ego they say, you walk into a martial arts gym, they say leave your ego at the door.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes it takes a while for you to understand what that means, because you're like, it's just a saying. I get it. But man, the first few weeks, I remember when because I had done boxing, but then I went into the grappling. And I remember the first time I was ever in a martial arts school, it was a grappling class. And I did the grappling class. And I remember falling in love with this art. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I can incorporate both boxing and this in one sport. And I was addicted from that first time. I just wanted to learn that part on the ground, being able to control people. Yeah. And even today, like I'm no black belt, but I have enough skills that I'm extremely confident it's something that if shit were to go down somewhere in the street, wherever, I'll feel comfortable against anybody, because I know that, I have this training, this discipline that could help me in anything. And man, it was a huge part of my life. And when I met you the first time, and we got talking, and then we became, we started this relationship, and I saw that you had boxing and you had a martial arts background as well. Not only, I think it helped, helped our bond as first as a coach and student, and then as friends and so on and so forth.
Yeah, just to cut you off, and even though it's supposed to be like about me, but I'm going to talk about you for a second. When you walked in, that's the first thing I noticed. You know what I mean? Just how you conducted yourself, and I did like the eyeball check to see who you were and stuff like that. And when I started to see you moving, I remember asking, well, what's your background? And you're like, oh, I've done this, I've done that. And I'm like, okay, because you are a practitioner of martial arts, it allowed me to know that you were capable of being taught, that you understood discipline, and you understood that you would have to drill in order to get better. So that's why you and I connected, even though we've never met before, or I didn't even know what other similarities we may have liked. We both are Macho Man fans.
Yeah.
But we only found that later. But do you understand? So yeah, it's those things that will connect. And like I said, I love alpha males, and you walked in, humbly acting like you owned the place. Do you understand? And I mean, like, the confidence that you came in, I mean, like, hey, I'm here to do some work. Let's work. And I remember, because I was a tryout and I was trying to kill people, and you were able to, you were able to do that. And as far as my ego, when it came to martial arts, I never had a problem getting beat by people that were better than me, because in every loss, there's a minor victory, because you know something about yourself. And I was very much the type that if you kicked my ass, I saw you the next day, and you kicked because I wanted to learn how you kick my ass and how to stop it. And that's why when I used to teach, or when I used to show the grappling aspect, if I dominated in a move, I would stop and then explain what I did in order to get the upper hand and what's the defenses against it, for two reasons. One, it builds your confidence. Two, you learn something. Three, and now it forces me to up my game. So if I show you a trick that I use to get you down, and I teach you the defense to it, now I got to step up even more. So my ego has always come in when, if you're better than me or you're my equal, I have no problems with that. Like, I don't have a chip on the shoulder. My shoulder comes from people who have less ability or less of my stature and accolades talking shit. Like, somebody walking in, they're like, well, yeah, I got two local belts at a church basement. Like, fuck off. I have 30 titles across the world. Like, we're not in the same realm. You know what I mean? Stay your place. Like, I'm not one to brag, but that's when my ego comes out, when I hear shit talking. You know what I mean? I like to address it, So.
Isn't it funny that just what you said there, I have 30 titles across the world. You say that to a lot of people, I'm talking men mostly, but people, they'll, right there, just that word, I have 30 titles across the world, they'll be like, who the fuck do you think you are? Automatically, they go on the defense, because they know they can't hold a jockstrap to your accomplishments, to your career, to the things you've done.
Right.
I cannot stay away far enough from people like that. It gives me like the creeps when I'm around people like that, and it didn't used to. It was only when I started surrounding myself with alpha males. Like, it's funny that you say when you saw me walk in for that tryout, because that I'll remember that day forever. Like, I remember the details. I remember it was.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Please hold that, because I do want to hear it. But real alpha males don't have issues with each other.
No.
A lion respects another lion. A gangster respects another gangster. Do you understand? Because they know, hey, if you're a king, you will find your own castle on your own mountain. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It's the ones who don't have that king factor. So an alpha male never bitches. Lions don't move like hyenas. Anyways, go on.
So when I walked into your gym, I remember the day. It was WrestleMania 30. That day was a Sunday. It was. Okay. I walk in and you see I have the confidence. I'm trying to conduct myself like, listen, I know what I bring to the pack, but honestly, I was there just because I saw a Facebook ad. I contacted you. I wanted to be able to tell myself, hey, I walked into a wrestling ring, a wrestling school. I got into a wrestling ring. I ran the ropes, and that's it. I didn't have any expectations past that Sunday. So when you say I saw you, you were, I sensed that vibe. I'll be honest, a lot of that vibe was, it was like fake it till you make it type thing. Because even though through martial arts, I had learned to be a lot more confident, a lot more of that alpha, because I had never been dominant through the years of martial arts. I had never won titles. I had never really made it to becoming a pro. It was really only amateur competition. I won some grappling here and there, but like I had never, the only fight I ever won was a boxing match. So it was coming from like, well, I kind of failed at this. Now maybe I can rekindle my love with pro wrestling. And when I met you, because I had met all these other coaches through my life that had propelled me to level up to a certain point, and then I met you, and then through the 4 years of being at your school, I leveled up because you were just a different type of animal that I had never been around. Like that mentality of like, it don't fucking matter how hurt you are. It don't matter how tired you are. If you say you're going to do something, you're going to fucking figure out a way to do it no matter what. Because number one, you made that commitment, and you're gonna achieve that commitment. You're gonna show up for that commitment. But also just listen, you got to believe that it's more than just getting to the point where your body says, okay, it's enough. And then you go, okay, it's enough. You got to tell your mind to shut the fuck up and just keep grinding and just keep going. And through those showing up at your Tuesday and Thursday and Sunday practices and figuring out like, oh shit, there might be a chance that I actually do become a professional wrestler. And then I'm actually like, holy shit, like there's actually potential here. I realized that through building this persona of being a pro wrestler and having an on-screen, I call it an on-screen presence, but you know what I mean? Like a presence of some sort, not just being an athlete. I built this the savage on my head. I became the savage through the years of you. So it was kind of an evolution, and I don't know. It's just something that I told my wife once this. I said, yeah, there's a part of me that wishes that I started my journey into professional wrestling when I was 24 instead of, martial arts. But I knew that if I met you at 24, I wouldn't have lasted 5 fucking minutes with you. You would have ate me alive, and you would have go, that guy's bullshit. He'll quit 3 days in. And that's what that would have been the truth.
I don't know about that. You know why? Because one thing, I think that's bullshit. You know why that's bullshit? Because I don't believe so, and I'm just basing it on like my rationale as a coach and watching people and stuff. And of course, during your life, that's when you have learning things and you change, and you're not the same person at 20 when you were 30 and 30 when. But the thing is, one of the things that I teach is I acknowledge if you have any greatness. I'm always, hey, you're great. You could be great. You could do. So it's like a positive hypnosis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some people cater to that, or some people need that. So maybe at 24 years old, you needed a male role model or coach that believed in you. Because I know for me, like, I became the coach I always wanted. I never had, you know what I mean, a pro wrestling coach. Do you understand? But if I did, I would have one that would say, hey, Dru, you're great. You could do this. You could go to the WWE. Like, I never had that reinforcement. So when you walk in, and if you have a spark, my job is to get that spark bigger. All right, it's a flame. It's a fire. It's a bonfire. So you know what I mean? Like I said, when it came to you, you had all this stuff. It was just for me, it was the confidence. It was just to teach you what you had to do, what you needed to learn, and to let you know you could do it. So when you said, hey, I'm thinking about this nickname Savage, or you go Savage, I'd be like, yo, when you did that in the match, do that all the time. That works. The crowd reacts. Or, you know, you would come in with an idea, or, you know, I want to be like this or like that. And I'm like, yeah, because the whole idea is, if I build your confidence, you're going to breathe. But if I smash you from the minute you come down, it doesn't work, and it's not fun. You don't mind doing the hard work because there's joy, whether it's the camaraderie with the other guys, with a coach who believes in you. Yeah. It's much easier to run up a hill with 1,000 pounds on your back when your coach is like, yeah, you could do it, you're the man, rather than you piece of shit, fucking run up there.
I think an important part of what you said is that when I walked into your school at Torture Chamber, I was immediately surrounded by other men that had the same hunger that at first I didn't know I had that hunger. And then it wasn't until I was surrounded by other fucking savages that I went, oh shit, like I have to pick up my game. Like I can't let these fucking guys win or get it one above me. It's like, if these guys are going to do 100 squats, I'm going to do 105 squats. Like there was this immediate competition, and it was a healthy competition.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree. You made a lot of people go like, whoa, well, fuck this guy. I'm not going to let this guy who came in 2 months after me smoke me. And that's what you need. Yeah. That's how you get better. That's the evolution of an athlete or a professional in anything. You should never shy away from competition. When I saw you, I was like, yo, okay. So when I trained privately, who did I call? Hey, come to the school, let's grapple, let's box. It's not about, am I a better boxer than you? I hope you're a better boxer than me. So I steps up my game. It's not about, oh, I'm a better grappler. I want you to outdo me, because then it's going to force me to level up. So that's healthy. That is needed. I'm a firm disbeliever of consolation trophy. I got a consolation trophy once. I left it there at the banquet. I'm like, what's this? They're like, oh, it's a consolation. But we don't win anything. Yeah, but they're going to give it to everybody. I saw that as the beginning of the end. They're like, Dru, pick up your trophy. I'm like,
I told my kids, if you ever get a consolation trophy or just a participation trophy, I said, do not bring that home. I do not want you to bring any sort of trophy or medals that you did not win. If you did not earn that medal or trophy, I do not want to see it on your wall, because you're given that it really really pisses me off, to be honest with you, when I see we're a dying breed. Like when I talk about you and I talk with you and I think about you, there's many guys and they're few and far between, but we're a fucking dying breed, because they're
dinosaurs.
It's like, and listen, we're not that old. That's what's surprising and worrying about me. And sometimes I have a kid, have my son, and I ain't no, look, I'm not easy on him, especially when it comes to competition, especially when it comes to certain traits that I believe are important on being a man. You might not understand why I'm telling you to do these small things, but when you're a man and you need to be accountable for yourself, you're going to know why I told you to do these things when you're 11 years old.
And that's okay, because from my viewpoint, you don't just do that, you also show love. I can always see love in pictures or in videos. So it's not just do this, do this, do this, do this. It's like, hey, I love you. I think you're the greatest, but you still got to do this, do this, do this. So there's a balance, and that's needed. And you're right. Like, and it's funny that when you mention your son, because I'm like, first, by the way, people don't know, he's the exact spitting clone of Stefan. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. It's like, I don't know. They just ripped out a piece of your blood, threw it against the wall, and it just morphed into another one. Like, he's going to be the spitting image of you. But anyways, but yeah, that's what's needed.
Yeah.
I don't believe in consolation now things. I don't believe, and it goes back to wrestling. I used to hate when I hear wrestlers tell, well, I've been here for 10 years. I should get a belt. That's like saying you've been in university and you've been attending for 12 years, but you've never passed any tests, but you deserve to get a doctorate or a bachelor. It doesn't make sense to me.
Not at all.
I never understood that. It's not about the length of your stay. It's what you did during the length of your stay.
We're building this generation of entitled people because a lot of, listen, back in the, I don't know, it's called back in the day. Like,
and you don't know, but you know what? People confuse back in the day or history because it's old. It's not right. Do you understand?
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's past that thing. We don't do things that way anymore. Yeah, but
that's stupid. That's stupid. Like 1,000 years ago, if they said, or 100 years ago, hydrogen and oxygen makes water, and that was founded out 60 or 70 years ago, it's still a fact.
It is.
Now, you can't say, well, that was back in the day. Now water's composed of lithium and hairspray. Like, what? Stop that.
They invented a hammer to hammer nails. We still use hammers no matter how long a fucking, like, we don't have these new tools. You need a nail in the wall, you use a fucking hammer. There are certain things in life that you need to use as tools to build, I don't want to say proper humans, but that's what it is. Like, because I look, I understand that a lot of young people having kids nowadays are people with jobs and money, and they're bringing in kids into a situation where they're able to give.
That's okay. Talk about experience. That's how it should be.
I mean, my kids want something. My son has a PlayStation in his room. Like, they don't go starving. They're extremely grateful for what they have, but they have a lot. We give a lot,
Well, you said they're grateful. You don't just teach them, here's the gift. You teach them all the parameters of them receiving that gift. They understand where that comes from. So it's all right. You're supposed to give to your children. Your children shouldn't have to go through the hardships that you went through. If I had a child, I wouldn't want them to have to be a starving artist or a hungry artist. Like, I may have told you that, middle class life, but even then I had a hustle. The first pair of sneakers I bought, because my mother brought me these, like, I said, Ma, I need sneakers for school. And she bought me these $10 Excalibur fucking shoes. They were plastic. They weren't even leather. They cracked as soon as they got to -0. And my mom wasn't broke. I'm like, there's no love for me. I had to go buy my first pair of British Knights. I went and got a paper route. So I learned how to hustle. So it's all about, it's okay to give to your kids, but they shouldn't feel entitled. You know what I mean? Yeah. You should entitle them like, hey, listen, when I've passed, this is generational wealth. And generational wealth is not just financial. It's what you leave with them, the imprint that you leave on their DNA in order for you to pass their DNA to theirs. You know what I mean? So
100%. I mean, I could not agree more that it has to come from the top. It has to come from the parents, both parents, if you're lucky enough to have both parents in the same house. But you're absolutely right. It needs to be those things, though, those tools in life need to be taught better to these kids instead of just giving them everything, giving them all the shortcuts. And then I go, because if there's one thing about me that I've never taken, even when I've given, even now, maybe when I was younger, but if you give me the choice between taking the shortcut or taking the long road, I'm used to taking the long road now. I'm going to take the long road because I know in that long road, I'm going to learn a lot more than what I'm going to learn in that shortcut.
True.
I'm going to learn things. It's going to take longer. Yes. But the tools that I'm going to learn at the end, but we're going to get to that point and I'm going to go, yeah, I got here a bit later than you, but I learned a lot more. I learned how to be taught, so I have to constantly remind myself about that because it's I feel like coming from where I came from, I didn't get the same head start at certain people, you know, like I don't like to make excuses, but I think certain people need to realize that you're born, you don't choose on what patch of dirt you're born, where you're born, the parents you're given. If you get two, you get one, or you get none.
Right. You just gotta work.
We don't all work from the same starting line. And some people sometimes aren't aware that certain people need to work harder to get and be at the same level as other people.
My dad told me this. He said, because you're black, and it's the thing that they tell, most parents tell to their kids, especially if they're black, you have to work twice as hard to receive half of what you deserve. You got to work twice as hard to get half of what you deserve. Just because people put certain parameters on you because of color of skin or where you're from or whatever the case may be. And that's the one thing that he drilled in me. So that's why, that's where my chip on the shoulder was like, you're not going to deny me. Like, I never believed in the race card. Like, there is definitely, but I don't use it. I don't be like, oh, I didn't get this because, of whatever the situation. I didn't get this because I didn't work as hard as I needed to. And that's why. So getting back to the whole, bragging about the 30 titles, it's not like nobody decided, hey, I'm going to go grab this guy from another continent and give him my promotion's top title. Like, nobody does that just as a gesture of goodwill. You have to show and prove. And that's the one thing that I've done as a wrestler. Me coming from a rap background and a hustling background, you know what I mean? I utilized it here. I'm like, what a lot of people don't realize, the whole selling t-shirts, nobody was selling t-shirts at the time until I did. There's nobody. If you look for documented facts, it was the Dru Onyx t-shirts. I'm not saying that people didn't have their own t-shirt, but they may have had a one-off or they might give 2 or 3. But at the time, I'm like, I need revenue. What people didn't realize is that when I left home and I went to CJEP and I went to whatever, I was dead broke. I remember many times, like I came back, and life will teach you certain things. Sometimes you take for granted. So after working, after doing semi-pro football and going to Ottawa, I got a job as security for the Saudi Arabian embassy in the consulate section in Ottawa on 99 Bank Street. They moved from there. So that job was ridiculous as far as pay. It was, and the perks and everything, and it was great. Then I moved back to Montreal because I said, for a couple of reasons, I was homesick, and I'm like, I want to see if I'm going to invest in this wrestling. When I started in wrestling, I wasn't working. I was living in a 1.5 apartment, and I was eating peanut butter and sandwiches. So I'd get a big jug of peanut butter, and I would get a loaf of bread, and morning, evening, lunch. That's what I'm eating as I'm trying to get this whole wrestling thing going. And when the bread was gone for that week, it was a big spoon of peanut butter in the morning, a big spoon of peanut butter in the evening, and in lunch. And, I was lucky that some girls liked me and they would get me a meal, you know what I mean? And, whatever the case. So for me, grinding and hustling has never been a problem. And some people feel like, okay, well, I'm just going to wait for all my props to come to me. I didn't have that luxury. So it's funny because I before Sami Zayn got signed to the WWE, I saw him because he's in Laval too. He was from Laval also. We were at a gym, and I told him that, because at that point I was like, seeing him traveling all over the world wrestling, this is before he got signed to the WWE, inspired me to do the same. And that's why I start going back to Spain, and I went and I did Ireland, and I start going back and wrestling, because for a couple of years I stopped. And I said, I was watching him in Japan, and that's what inspired me to start. And he goes, that's so funny, because me and Kevin Steen looked at you saying that if Dru could travel to England, travel to the States, so people weren't doing that on the norm before me. People weren't selling T-shirts. I remember, because you weren't getting big money as a wrestler. So I'm like, I need streams of revenue. So I'd get money, get 20 shirts, and sell that, and sold that like crack. The money from the 20 shirts came in, sold, more, and boom, boom, boom. And then when people saw that it was viable, that you could sell your merch, then people were doing it. But at that time, nobody was doing that. At that time, nobody was traveling. Like, I was wrestling for the NWA, you know what I mean? So there was a lot of things that I gave to the game that I see people do and people take for granted. Like, I see people with multiple belts for different federations. Nobody was doing that until I was doing that. Nobody. And it's not bragging. This is facts. If you go do your homework, you will see that. I never let, like, even championship belts. You see the quality of championship belts. Most belts for promotions had was on some synthetic leather and metal from a trophy store.
Yeah.
I remember I said, hey, why not emulate what you see on TV? And that's the one thing that I always tried to do. Like, people always did a whack-ass version of what they saw the pros were doing. I always said, do the same things the pros are doing, but do it with a budget. I don't have the same facilities or the financial resources than some superstar or some promotion. But if I could do a small version of greatness, then it's going to add to my greatness. Like, a lot of things, like in shows, a lot of formats that people are doing now, promoters are doing now, is because when I went to these shows in the States, when everybody was still wrestling in church basements and stuff, like when I was in a TNA locker room, the first thing I did after everybody left, they had the booking on the wall. I checked, ripped it off, stuffed it, you know what I mean? I felt like a spy, like if I could smuggle this out of the country. Got back home, and now I'm looking at the format of how they book their stuff, and now I'm putting it on the wall. And then, you know, Steve from NSPW, I invited him to come down to see how I run a show, and then he started. Or even little things. Every time I used to go to a WWE tryout, and I saw certain things that the wrestlers would do, I would come back home and tell my students, hey, the wrestlers would wear a shirt over their gear so that way their gear is not dirty. They would have the knee pads at their ankles, you know what I mean? So they wouldn't have to look for them and pull them up before. So all those things that I saw, I always try to do, you know what I mean? Because the whole idea, in order for you to be great, you got to be around greatness. A lion cub cannot learn how to be a lion cub without the reference of a lion.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that like, oh, pat on my back or whatever the case is. All to say is I used to challenge myself, and I still continue to challenge myself now, because the reason why I've been in this game so long, where other people I've seen people come in after me and retire before me. Like, they can't get rid of me. I'm like an old battleship. Like, you're just going to have to like when I retire, you guys are just going to have to put me in a war museum and see that motherfucker? We couldn't put him at the bottom of the ocean.
Couldn't kill that fuck.
No, because first, I still have a love for pro wrestling. Second, you know what I mean? I always want to get 1% better. I've always used to tell the students, if you get 1%, if the sun would get 1% hotter, it will blaze the world. Yeah. So the thing is, as you get older, you have injuries, you know what I mean? You're dealing with life and whatever the case is. You may not have the skill set, but it's like what you said, it's the long road home. Because you took the long road and you learned all these certain skill sets, now you can take shortcuts because you have experience now to help you. Do you understand? Yeah. You're not supposed to fight as hard as you were when you were 18. You're supposed to learn 10 years of experience to make you work easier at 28 and at 38 and at 48.
Yeah. I think it's important that especially when you're in a business like professional wrestling, where it's so physical, and that at a certain point, like to add to your point, you do have to get smarter about how you do things. You have to learn, and the things you learn, you need to apply them. I think it's easy for a lot of independent wrestlers or any athlete to learn something. Like, I can learn anything. All you have to do is pay attention to what someone is telling you. But
that's hard. That's hard. You say that. It's easy. It's not that easy. You could do it.
Yeah.
But people, it's hard for them because they already have a set of prejudices when they're learning stuff. You always hear in martial arts, you got to be like water. You got to be an open landscape. So the fact that you can, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But not everyone has that. Anyway, sorry, go on.
You're right about that. But another aspect of that is that I think a lot of people will get the info. They'll be like, oh, that's fantastic. I'm so happy that Dru gave me that knowledge. And then they'll never fucking apply it. How many times you've seen or told somebody, hey, how about you try this instead? And they'll be like, dude, that's fuck, man. That's so smart. Thanks. Then you see them 3 months later at a different show,
3 months, like, not even.
Yeah, I'm being positive here. And you're like, hey, I watched your match. Do you remember what I told you last month? You didn't do it. You're not doing it. And it's just over and over. I think once people get set in their ways, even though sometimes they might listen, like you're right, some people just don't fucking listen, because the minute someone else starts telling them something that they need to correct or they might want to correct, they shut down because their ego gets like, I don't need to listen to this fucking guy. Who is this guy? Listen, we've all been like that to a certain, I think as male and ego, you kind of have to balance all these things out. But being open to interpretation in life, it's like you have to be willing to be open to not be this is something new for me, is like, don't be married to your fucking ideas. Like, because one day somebody might come to you and show you a different perspective, and you might go, oh, fuck, I was wrong about this. He's right. And then some people go, I can't, because I've invested so much into being this person that it's hard for me to then just do a 360 and then do what I think is right. And if I try to live my life like right now, where it's like, I have my set of things that I know who I am, but there's just certain things where I allow myself to grow every single day. Like that thing you said earlier about being better, just even a little bit. Like if the sun was hotter 1% every single day, we'd be dead already, because we'd be burnt. But if you, as a person, as a human, can grow even 0.1% every day, just learn something new, just grow, be better than the person yesterday. It's the only person you can compete with is yourself. Yeah. Then you start growing, and then things start being easy. It just gets easier. It just gets easier because you're not plagued with all those insecurities and all that anxiety of trying to figure out these things about yourself, because after a while you're like, well, that's who I am. I just need to keep getting better at these things.
I remember there's a business mogul in WCW. Who owned it? Ted Turner. Ted Turner. I remember a quote from him. He's like, I'm not petty and my ego's in check. I'll take the best idea from my people and make it mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he said also another quote was like, you have to always constantly, like, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like you have to always evolve and take the best idea. So for me, I don't care where the information is or the idea. If it's gonna make the product, my brand, better, I don't care. And it never bothered me to give props to whoever. Also, going back to why people, it's hard for them to learn, like you said, the whole 3 months thing. I will tell somebody literally, hey, we're working a part of a match. Do this. And they're like, okay. And they won't do it. And I'm like, yo, I gave you keys to the kingdom. I gave you some advice that I know has been proven in my 20 years of wrestling that I've been using, that has been fail safe. I tell you, and you don't. So sometimes it's not a trust between me and them, or they don't trust themselves. So as a coach, I got to try to figure out ways to overcome that. But then there's some people, their proverbial hand on the stove. Hey, don't put the hand on the stove, you will burn. Look at my hand. You see all the scars? I don't have fingerprints because I put my hand on the stove. You shouldn't do it. They see it as, well, maybe my hand is thicker. Maybe the heat is not as hot on your stove. And then they show you. And I'm like, because you don't respect wisdom. They don't, because you have the energy to dispute. As you get older, you realize, you know how many things my father told me, and I'm like, this prehistoric way of thinking, this guy's in my ass. And now I sprout what he says like he was the Prophet Muhammad. There's so many times I have to catch myself, and I'm like, ugh, I sounded like Lloyd. Oh, I sounded like Lloyd. But the truth is timeless. Yeah. Wisdom is timeless. Wisdom is an application of knowledge and experience. As a youth, you lack experience. As a youth, you may not have knowledge, but you have yourself, you have the energy to explore. Why explore the longest part of the tundra in the Arctic when someone's telling you, hey, follow that path? That path, yeah. But the thing is, also men, as far as ego, they don't want to know that another man has helped them. Some men feel like, hey, I got to do it myself. I was never like that because my background, nobody ever did anything for me. And I don't mean it like, oh, like, of course there was some people, but for the most part, I didn't have that help. There wasn't a Dru Onyx that said, hey, I'm going to teach you the fundamentals. I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab you. We're going to go on a tour in Europe. In 3 years or 4 years, I'm going to get you a WWE tryout. Hey, I'm going to go help you go get like, I wish I had that. But in the same sense, sometimes maybe people get used to it. Like, I've always been accused that the problem is I used to give so much to my students too soon, so they don't appreciate it. And it's funny because a lot of times they'd be like, you know what? When you were giving me these jewels, whether on a physical level or on an intellectual level, I took it for granted. So it's just the process of what the youth does with people of knowledge and wisdom and experience. So the whole idea, the reason why Mike Tyson was so great is that at 14 years old, he was smart enough or trusting enough to believe in the practices of Customado and said, okay, I'm going to follow this man. And Cus, once again, constantly told Mike, you're the greatest. You could be the next world champion. You have the skill set to be the best heavyweight of all time. So he was constantly brainwashing him with positivity and boosting confidence, and at the same time teaching him some gangster techniques in boxing from the experience that Customado. And Mike was either was smart enough or too dumb, and I don't mean dumb meaning realizing I know shit. I'm going to listen to this man. So I know when I go, like, I've been training for 21 years. I've just took up judo, and it's funny. They were teaching me how to do break falls. All right, so they're telling me, okay, because I didn't tell them I was a pro wrestler. I didn't come in, it wasn't like years ago, hey, I'm a pro wrestler, look at my belt. No, I just came in there, shut up. I'm like, listen, I want to learn how to do judo because it's going to help my game. And I had a love for it. And they're like, okay, so they're doing this, doing that. And then they're like, all right, we're going to work on break falls. Don't worry. It might be hurtful. I want you to exhale, hit the mat. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And even though they were teaching me a different style, I didn't go and tell them, hey, listen, I know how to do break falls better than you. Yeah. I've been doing it I just shut my mouth and I did it. Do you understand? And that's what you have to do. And even then, when I was doing certain things, the first thing, it was almost like what happened to you. What's your background? I'm like, why? Because your footwork, you know what I mean? So when you're good at something, it will shine through. And then your skills and your personality will gravitate to others. And it's a herd mentality. So if people see greatness in you, you got to allow them to help cultivate that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you may not even notice it. Like, I'm going to tell you one story right now. Like, I've had about 4 or 5 tryouts with the WWE. I have never thought at any point in my career about tryouts or even working for the WWE, because it was never in my head that I could be good enough. Now imagine I had a coach somewhere in my wrestling life to say, hey, you could do this, and I'm going to show you how to do this as well as possible. I would have been a fish to the water. I would have never left that coach's side. Mm-hmm. But that's because I didn't have it. Like, sometimes, like, you've been to other gyms, you've been to other coaches, so you learn to appreciate me because there was some differences that you saw right away. Now, what about the person who doesn't have that type of back of history? They don't know what they have. They don't know when they walk into this dojo, oh my God, this is a nice dojo, it's a clean dojo, it's a structured dojo, it's a respectful dojo. Dru doesn't allow people to make fun of each other, you know what I mean? You don't realize that, you know what I mean? And then only after, but I guess that's the way it is.
I think a lot of people feel the need to go and like I saw it in martial arts a little bit because when I started in martial arts, it was like the big boom. The Ultimate Fighter was
Yep.
starting. It was gyms were opening left and right.
Yep.
Because everybody was all of a sudden, I come from a karate background, I come from this, or you'd filter through the bullshit, and then you'd finally find a gym that okay, this guy, look, there's more than one coach. Like I remember walking into a martial arts gym and going, why is there so many people here? Like not as in students, but why is there so many coaches here? Like I thought you walk into a karate dojo, there's one guy and there's students, or there's one or two guys. I remember when I walked into Combat Arts Academy in Mississauga, there was a couple of main guys, but every class was, you had a boxing, you had a Muay Thai, you had grappling, and every class had its own teacher.
Amazing.
And then not only did they have their own discipline, they had their own mentality, their own experience they brought to the table. It was such a mixture of not only different cultures, but different disciplines and different point of views, different perspectives. But at the end of the day, the main goal was you walk in here, it's all about becoming better every single time you step in and out of this gym. Your goal should be when you step out, you look, did I learn something today? Did I become better today? Am I better than yesterday? And, I moved on from Mississauga, I came to Montreal. I did TriStar, then I went to Sherbatov and
Sherbatov and Laval.
Yeah. And honestly, like, and it's not a knock to other gyms, is that once I got to Sherbatov, there was these two Russian brothers with this mentality that I had never seen before. These two young men that were just animals. And I was like, wow, they'll never be broken. These guys are confident, but they put in the work. Like, it was completely different for me. It leveled up my mental toughness from not having any almost to being extremely, have a sharp mind. Like, and that when I was given that, when they injected me with that you just need to sharpen your mind, and once your mind becomes stronger, you'll be able to do whatever the fuck you want. And when I fucking flipped the switch, when the switch was flipped, I'm like, whew, you kind of see this whole view of like all these possibilities, because you know that whatever you want to do, you just have to tell yourself, just figure out what the blueprint is, follow that blueprint, and look at others that have accomplished that thing too, and then kind of make your way through that, and then just do the fucking work. Once you tell yourself, do the work, and you go in and you do the work, you have zero excuses. Like, no matter how long it takes you, if you keep putting in the work, one day you'll accomplish your goal, and you'll be like, fuck, I'm glad I stuck to this. I'm glad I stuck to this person. I'm glad I stuck to this gym or this coach. And I think people need to sometimes figure that out on their own. And then sometimes you have someone like me that's a bit more mature, a little bit more miles, and that has seen a shit that, other people hasn't. And then you kind of just bring that with your baggage and go, hey, I give you, I'm giving myself to you. Do mold me, do whatever you want with it. And I trust you 100%. And there's a relationship that has to be built there. And I think I love that part of wrestling martial arts, is that you meet people that are somewhat like you, different in different ways, but
of course,
that fucking, like, iron sharpen the iron. You've said that many times when I've been in your dojo. There's so many things you said that I keep, like that, and the fact that you always refer to us as sharks, especially like the few guys that and I was always like, why is he saying we're sharks? And then one day you said it's because a shark never stops moving, because if it stops fucking moving, it
can't
dies.
breathe. Yeah.
And
oxygen
then
through the gills.
Yeah. And And people, I know you know, obviously follow me on social media with everything that I went through the last 30 days.
The run, yeah.
Training to run fucking 42 kilometers
That's crazy.
Like a crazy fuck. And my wife, she works out now, and part of her workout that I do for her, I have her run like short distance. Like she'll run like half a kilometer. And every time she runs, she's like, I don't understand how you did this thing. And it kind of like makes me go like, well, it's because years of sharpening that fucking mind of like when I'm 5Ks in and my hip is hurting and my knees are hurting. Yeah. I got 15Ks to go. I said I was going to do 20K today. I'm going to fucking run 20K. I don't care if I have to drag my ass on all fours to make it to the finish line.
Yep.
That mentality is like, once you have that, fuck, I would not trade that for all the gold in the world. I would not. If you said, I'm going to take that away from you and I'm going to exchange it for all the money in the world, I'd be like, keep your fucking money. I would rather have that
mindset
in my head. That mindset is mine. And it's my responsibility now to inspire not only my immediate family, my friends, but others, because I think it's something that we all need to learn. To me, that's what I see it like, you know. I'm grateful for all the tools that you and other coaches have taught me. Now it's my responsibility as a human being and part of a society to teach you what I think is important, different tools. And just by simply inspiring you by doing feat that you might find impossible, but that I could show you if you just have the right mindset, you can fucking accomplish. I know it sounds cliche and
no, it's not cliche at all. No.
It is true. If you have the right mindset, ain't nobody can fuck with you. Ain't nobody can fuck with you. And if they fuck with you, you'll be like, I got this. I got this.
So let me ask you that. All right. So ask me some questions pro wrestling. So because we've talked about life, but we didn't ask me anything about pro wrestling, about me and stuff like that.
June 12th, 1999, your first wrestling match. Do you remember that day? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, because that was a mistake. Sorry, go on.
No, okay, so go ahead.
No, but what are you gonna say? I asked the question.
I'm just curious to know, because I remember my first match. It was with you.
Yeah,
and I remember that day. I remember how I was nervous. But also I remember all the things that I reconfirmed to myself on that day. So I remember that day because it was a huge day in not only my life but in my career, you know. And I'm just curious, like, did we all go through the same feelings when we're about to go into that fucking ring for the first time?
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna tell you my first time, but I'm gonna also tell you like on your my thoughts on your first match. I'm not even talking about before. I just like backstage. You were just very quiet, and I wasn't even worried. At no point was I worried about you. Like, and maybe that was detrimental. Like maybe I should have been like, okay, we got to do this. That, like we ran it through as much as we were supposed to, so I was comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But you were just very chill, and I just remember being like, my thought was this is gonna be a walk in the park. Like I don't even know why I put on my wrestling boots. This is gonna be so easy and fun. I just hope that he enjoys this as much as I'm gonna enjoy it. So that was going through my mind. But I was like, usually when I wrestle, like some of my students, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to cover this. I'm going to make sure this happens. I'm going to have to be constantly talking. I didn't have that with you. So it was just like, it was fun. And
just I want to add to that. Yeah. I've wrestled you again in tag team wrestling after that. And having more experience, we were able to communicate in the ring. Right.
Yeah.
But there's a few people I've wrestled that is completely different than anybody else. You being one of them. Pat Gannett is another guy that I recently wrestled right before all this that is also somebody similar. There's a few of those.
Which is?
When I'm in the ring with you, and I remember this from the first match, it was like, okay, we're on the same team kind of, because we got to work together to make this beautiful match. But there was this fucking competition of like, oh yeah, like you, like really, like you think you're gonna beat me and you think you're gonna outdo, like there's that instant, like I see how good you are, but here's and there was this competition. And I think that's why the first match, we barely said anything in the ring because we knew our match. We had worked at it really hard. And I was so confident when I was just being in the ring with you. I knew that if shit went south, that you were going to correct shit because you had all the experience in the world. But I remember how physical and how much I loved it. And I'm like, I wish I could wrestle men like this.
Dude, I'm going to tell you a couple of things. I'm going to tell you something like this. And even though you were just starting, I'm a fan of you. I'm a fan of your persona. I'm a fan of how you wrestle. And dude, like, we should have been wrestling for centuries. You should have been one of my opponents, constantly up my ass chasing me for a belt. So it was a no-brainer to put you and Mustafa together. And originally, the whole idea was to have you guys feud with the Paradise Boys. But because of what happened and they left, we jumped in and we were the major antagonist. I enjoy wrestling you because you have a martial arts background, because you are intense, because you give it to people. And I come from a competitive background. I love UWFI. I love King of Pancreas. I love that type of thing. So I knew, like for me, you're like a pro wrestling Boss Rutan. Like I've always said that. And the thing about, fighting Gary Albright or something, the Black Gary Albright. But the thing is, like, and I didn't even tell you that, but like Josh Barnett's Bloodsport is out. Like, if it wasn't the pandemic, I'd be telling you, yo, dude, you got to come over to the dojo. Let's work out. I want to do a match on Bloodsport with you. So that was a no-brainer. And as far as competitive, the biggest problem with pro wrestling, I think, this is my opinion, whether it can be supported by fact, which I think it could be, but this is my opinion. I find that the majority, not all of it, but the majority that I've seen on an indie level, it looks more like a demonstration than a battle, than a fight. Pro wrestling has to have the semblance of this is real. You got to be able to convince the fans who think that, okay, wrestling's whatever, predetermined, blah, blah, blah. I've always took pride on, that other stuff was crap, but that, those guys, I think those guys really hate each other.
Yeah.
Like, I always brought the big fight feel. It is needed. It's imperative. Too many times, if the wrestling looks choreographed, if there's not a grunginess, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be certain spots. Of course, like it can't be just all one style. But it's the emphasis. When you work a hold, you work a hold. When you throw a strike, you throw a strike. There's human emotion. If you kick me in my ribs, I'm going to say motherfucker, and then I'm going to throw a punch to your face. Like those are like normal things. So when people saw that, like people in the crowd was like, oh. So it wasn't about taking advantage of you, because I've always told you and anybody who fought, whatever I give you, give it to me. Sometimes I say even more, because if you're smaller than me, which you're not, like meaning like if you were like I can't figure out a wrestler right now, but just a Rey Mysterio. If you were fighting me, I'd be like, yo, dude, when you strike, give it to me. Yeah. When you do anything you do, pound it, and I don't mind. I'll take the black eye, because the story we want to tell is about adversity, about violence, about combat. You know what I mean? Wrestling is not supposed to look like a demonstration. There's a difference between combat, UFC, and a martial arts expo, where it's a demonstration, a kung fu demonstration.
Yeah,
it's not the same as getting into the octagon, even though they're both using elements of martial arts. And I find with pro wrestling, there's a lot of that, and that's why I can't watch it. And there's some things that are good. I love the purists. So with you. Anyways, back to my first professional match. It wasn't supposed to be a match. I came there to watch the show, and after the matches, because once again, we're talking about like what you were able to enjoy as a student. When you came to my school, there was a ring, and there was a wrestling mat from jump, or pretty close to jump. When I was training, I had 2 flat mats on the ground, and not even a crash mat. So the majority of my training was never in a ring. The only time I can get into the ring is when NCW, Northern Championship Wrestling, had a show. So I would help set up the ring, watch the show. Then after the show finishes, 10, 11 o'clock, Then the students got into the ring for an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes 3, because this is the only time that we have access to the ring. And then we had to tear it down. So picture 4 students tearing down a ring at 3 o'clock in the morning, once a month.
Wow.
So that was once a month. So I would only get into the ring once a month for 3 hours. Every other day, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'd be working my craft, plying my craft on 3 thin mats that were connected by Velcro. That was my training. So 6 months in, there was a show in Bar Noir, and my teacher, who was the Quebec heavyweight champion, Mark the Grizzly, he was supposed to fight, I think his name was Night Stalker, I believe. And Night Stalker already told the booker, I'm not going to be there that day. But the booker forgot. So when they got to the show and everything, he's like, oh, Night Stalker's not coming. He did contact me to tell me he wasn't going to go. What are we going to do? This is the main event. My coach turned around and said, Dru could do it. And I'm like, no, I can't. He's like, yeah, Dru's going to be able to do this. I'll have the match with Dru. And I thought for the first time in my life, my coach was on crack, because it was 6 months in. I didn't feel like I was a natural, and I was obviously I was the best trainee that he had. But at no point did I thought I was ready. And you know what's funny? The good ones never think they're ready. When I remember telling you, oh, you're going to have your match, you're like, are you sure? Yeah. But the ones who have no skills, they have the most confidence. They'll be like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm like, yo, dude, you've only had 1 practice. Yeah, but I'm ready to wrestle. But the guys who have potential for greatness, they're always like, whoa. Maybe another 6 or 7 months? And I'm like, dude, you're ready. Okay, and they are. So Mark saw that in me. I didn't see that in me. I was like, I didn't even have wrestling gear. I only had my practice gear, which was, at that time, I was using football cutoff football pants that I used, because that was the closest thing to emulate to tights. I had these big Cooper black knee pads, and I had my wrestling shoes. And I had an Ice Cube Predator t-shirt. It was a cool-ass, anyway, t-shirt. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they're already convinced. They're like, yeah, okay, all right, in the main event. And I'm in shock now. And the Mark is like, just follow me and you'll be okay. So I'm like, all right, well, he must know what he's doing. So after the initial shock, I'm like, okay. So I start getting ready and getting dressed and stuff. And I cut the sleeves off my Ice Cube shirt, which I didn't want to do. But I was like, all right, fine. And they're like, well, what music do you want to play? And I'm like, okay, do you have DMX anthem?
Rough Riders Anthem?
Rough Riders Anthem. Yeah. That was my thing. And they're like, what's your name? And I'm like, Dru Onyx. And he's like, Dru Onyx? I go, yeah. Because I played this role-playing dice game where you make these wrestling characters. And Dru Onyx was supposed to be a version of who I was. He wears black and purple, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, Dru Onyx. And he goes, where are you from? And I said, Watertown, New York. Because I said, okay, I got to be from the States or something like that. And Watertown was one of the – it had the oldest football team ever. It's like their football team is 104 years, like more than anybody in the NFL. Watertown, Red and Blacks. So I'm like, okay. And then so I don't remember having a chance to be nervous. Like I was definitely, but as soon as the music hit and I came out, my years as a rapper working in front of crowds, that was the easy part. Like the reason why that match was easy for me was 2 things. I was a student of the game. I was that dude, and I still am, that would watch a match 50 times. My father used to make fun of me. They're like, you're watching these Japanese tapes again? I'm like, yeah. They're like, it's the same match. I know this because every time I see you, you're watching this match. He's like, if you would study your math, like you study this match, you'd be a Black Einstein. You know,
Sorry, I just had somebody close the door.
No problem. So I was a student of the game, so I understood psychology to a certain degree, even though I learned more after. And I was a good listener. Whatever my coach told me to do, I just did. And whereas most people are more intimidated by crowds, I love crowds. The larger the crowds, the better I perform. Like, it's a shame I don't get to wrestle in front of 30,000 people every week. Yeah. Like, that's how I feel. I never get shook by large crowds. I've always loved it. Like, what? Like when we went to Rivière de Loup in 2000, you got to wrestle in front of 2,000 people or 1,500 people, 1,500 people in your first year of wrestling. That's crazy. Most people never even get that experience. But so I'm there. It's an arena.
I was wrestling for 4 months when I remember it was a last minute change. You needed a tag team. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I remember walking into that place and I'm like, oh, wow, that experience was pretty crazy. So
yeah. So getting back to that. So I'm fighting Mark, and he's the Quebec champion. And he has so much heat that the minute I walked out, two things. Because I believed who my character was, even though it was a character that I formed like maybe 30 minutes before. But I was so into my gimmick, and to all the fans, I passed the eyeball check because I'm 6'2". I was 300 pounds at that time. I just came back from playing football, so I was in the best shape of my life. And I'm coming in there like I'm about to kick ass. And the match was good. Nobody believed it was my first match. And I remember after how proud my coach was of me, and he's like, yo, this guy's going to be the next Quebec champion. And I became a Quebec champion 13 years later. And what was cool about that whole situation, when I first, after the match, we took a picture. It was me, Mark, and his manager, and we took a picture, and he has me holding his belt. 13 years later, I was able to recreate when I won the belt. The manager and Mark happened to be there that night, and we took the exact same picture.
That's amazing. I think you showed me that picture, or the original one, or the second one. I think you posted. You might have posted it.
I must have posted both.
Yeah.
So hit me up. What other things? What do people want to know about me?
Oh my God, what do they don't want to know about you? Listen, there's one thing that I've always been. You've been how many years now in the business? It's
21.
Like 99. I mean, we're talking 21 years, right?
21 years. Yeah.
Number one, I don't understand how you've been able to stay in the business for so long, just because of the physical toll pro wrestling takes on you. It's definitely a mental thing. I know you as a person, as a man, so I know why. Do you remember? Okay, I'll ask you this: the first title you ever won, it
ACW.
was the ICW title.
The ACW. It was a Ontario title. I was working for Smith Hart, Bret Hart's brother,
Yeah.
Smith Hart, and it was crazy because I got to wrestle in the Stampede Ring, and it was a tour in Cambridge, Ontario, and other places, and that tour was kind of crazy. And when I won that belt, it was nuts, but I didn't win it. I was awarded it because they needed a champion. So they gave me the belt. So my first championship was awarded to me, and I made a defense all through that tour. And what was funny about that was I go, Smith, this is my first champion. And it was a big ass belt. It must have weighed 10, 15 pounds. It was crazy. So I said, Smith, I know the tour is over, and I don't know when I'm going to see you again, because I was training at the the Hart Brothers Academy. I said, is there any way that I could bring this belt just to show my friends and my family? And Smith was so cool. He was like, yeah, no problem, take it. Carl Leduc, which I was riding with, and he was going back and forth. He's like, basically take it home, and then the next time Leduc comes back up here, he'll bring the belt. We're not doing shows anytime soon. So I'm like, great. So I come home, and I'm showing off this belt, and I'm like, wow, I'm a champion, and I'm freaking out and whatever. Smith didn't get permission from the promoter to allow me to bring the belt, so they thought I stole the belt.
Oh, Jesus.
So I walk in to a show that I'm doing locally, and the promoter is Carl Leduc's father, and he's fucking going off. He's like, what are you doing stealing the belt? I gave you an opportunity to go there to train with the Hearts. They give you a championship and you steal the belt. I'm like, what are you talking about? I brought the belt here because I wanted to take a picture with you to thank you for giving me this opportunity. They said, who told you his permission? I'm like, Smith Hart. He's like, he's not the guy that owns the promoter. And I assumed that he did, and he said, okay. He's like, they were going to threaten to bring a bike gang to beat me up for the belt. I was like, what? Anyways, to make a long story short, then, it was all cool. And Carl, because the thing is, when I told Carl, I said, Carl, hey, can you bring it next month? He's like, oh, I'm not going up there for another 3 months. So for 3 months, I had that title in Montreal. So by then, the promoter has no, like, where's the belt? Oh, we gave it to Dru. Well, when's he coming back? We don't know. What's his phone number? We don't have it. So, you know what I mean? They thought I fucking ran with this. So anyways, that was my first instance with the belt.
How many, you've been in the business, like I said, 21 years. How many, do you know approximately or exactly how many matches you've wrestled?
No, but Cage Match has put 536, and I know that they've missed a lot. So I would say, honestly, about 600 to 700 matches.
Of all those matches, the most memorable one, go.
All right, so there's a couple. Me and Finn Balor in Wales over the British Commonwealth Championship, where he beat me for it for the first time. That match was crazy. So much that people in the crowd who saw that match, it was a falls count anywhere, no disqualification match. There was a federation that was made because 18 fans saw that match and got inspired, and they made that promotion. And ironically, 2 or 3 years later, I got to wrestle in that promotion. They invited me to come down, and that's how they told me how that started. So Finn Balor, that match. Pat Gannett as me as Soa Min versus him in MWF. Our first blow-off of a feud, our first feud, the blow-off match. Once again, it was a falls count everywhere. It was crazy. Me versus Sabu. It was me and Green Phantom versus Sabu and PCO. That match was crazy because Sabu, a week later, not even a week later, was going to go back to WWE, and he was on the ECW brand. In fact, he was fighting Rey Mysterio the following week. So at that time, I was the last indie match he was going to have before he went to the pro. And Sabu was mad cool because I met him a few months before that match because I was in Florida for a TNA tryout and at lockdown. And mad cool because you always hear like crazy things about Sabu and stuff, and how, you know, just a lot of crazy shit. But he was nothing but mad cool. Like, so when I saw him in TNA, I'm like, oh my god, that's Sabu. And he was always in character. And what I mean by that, like, he was himself, but he was always with the headdress, and he was always in his wrestling gear. No matter where you saw him in the hotel, he always had his gear. So at the lockdown pay-per-view, it was 2006. He's fighting Samoa Joe in the cage. And I see him come into the venue, and he's already dressed. So he has his luggage, and he's already in gear. And his thumb was broken. He got his thumb broken or his hand broken in Mexico like 4 days before, and he's already wrestling and he's fighting. So I see him, and then after that, we're all going to the airport the next day, and we're out waiting for the bus to get us to the airport. And just picture this seating arrangement. I'm waiting. We're on a park bench, and it's me in the middle, Sabu to the right of me, and Scott Steiner to the left. Like the craziest pick. And we're sitting there, you know what I mean? So I had a 6-pack of cold water that was in my fridge in my hotel, and I hear, I go, Sabu, would you want a drink of my water? He's like, you'd give me? I'm like, sure. He's like, thanks. And I looked at Scott, and Scott, honestly, was the only person that intimidated me ever in wrestling. This guy, his eyes had the look of death. Like he's killed people and nobody has found the body. But he was a really nice guy. But I'm talking about like being shook, intimidated, and he was nice, but you could tell there was a demon somewhere in there and you weren't to fuck with him. I didn't speak to him, but I was talking to Sabu and whatever. So when the next month, Sabu comes in, he's in the locker room and everybody's like, oh, Sabu, ECW. He turns around and he's like, hey, what's up? And he comes up and he's like, hey, what's going on there? And everybody's like, how does Dru know Sabu? But I just saw him 2-3 weeks ago. So he's like, yeah, what's going on? Blah, blah. And he had so much respect. He looked at me and he's like, hey, you wear black and purple. I said, I have purple pants and I have burgundy, but the ring cover is burgundy. I'm gonna look like I'm invisible. Do you mind if I wear the purple tights? Like, this is Sabu, hardcore legend, all around the world, won world titles, asking me if it's okay if he can wear purple. I'm like, you're Sabu, you can wear whatever you want. So we're there, and we're figuring out the match. And I wanted to speak to him first, let him know that I wasn't a fucking kook. So we're talking about like old school wrestling in his uncle's territory, because his uncle was the original Sheik. And once he knew that I knew the basis of like pro wrestling and the regional territories, he was cool. So at one point we were planning, and all kinds of crazy ideas are going out in the match. We're gonna do this, whatever. And he turns around to me like, kid, I'm gonna be wrestling you the whole match. And I'm like, what? He's like, I'm gonna be wrestling you. So if you watch that match for 21 minutes of that match, 18 minutes is just me and Sabu. Sabu purposely said, hey, I'm going to be working with you. And I remember a lot of times, most people, when they want to wrestle a celebrity or a pro wrestler that, was they want to do their highlight reels. They want to be able, I want to give him a spear. It's the equivalent of you playing basketball with Jordan or LeBron. You're not there to dunk over Jordan. You're there to see Jordan do his magic on you. You are a supporting cast. You are the Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters. I'm not there to. So he's like, Arabian Facebuster? Yeah. Arabian Facebuster off the top rope? Yeah. Hurricanrana? Yeah. Hurricanrana. So whatever he was asking, I'm like, Sabu, whatever you want to do. Once he realized that I was willing to give and make him look good, he's like, okay, well, I'll let you throw me here, and you can suplex me here. And for me, it was a mark-out moment, because one of my favorite feuds in ECW was Taz versus Sabu. And I'm a big fan of Taz. There's a lot of influences with Dru Onyx and Taz. And when I saw Taz fight Sabu and knew that I was going to wrestle Sabu, what was funny was I was offered a lot of money to fight Sabu. You know what I mean? Because at that time, I wasn't wrestling in that promotion, and I had issues with that promotion. But the promotion knew that even though we had issues with each other, it would make great business to have me fight there. So I had to applaud them and give them props on that. But what they didn't know, and this is the first time I'm ever saying it in front of any other than friends, yeah. I would have done that show for free. I would have paid money to wrestle Sabu. I would have, whatever. So now in the match, we're fighting and we're going through the stuff. And then after the match, by mistake, the chair landed on my face, smashed my jaw, hurt my jaw. And he comes back and he's like, yo, man, I'm sorry, I hurt the jaw. And I'm like, don't worry about it. He's like, no, I was a little bit reckless and I hurt you and I'm sorry. And I'm like, you hear so many negative things about that dude. That's why in wrestling you learn, don't judge anybody until you met them. I've met people that other people said, I hate it, or I can't stand this person, this guy's bullshit. But he was always cool with me, and he never showed me any of the stupidities that I've said. Not to say that, because everybody shows two sides of themselves. I may be really cool with you, and I might be a devil to somebody on purpose with reason. So you never get the same person. But with him, it was crazy. Also talking about another ECW alumni fighting Tommy Dreamer. Fighting Tommy Dreamer was cool because both, and it's funny, they both gave me the same compliments. They both said, you're a combination of Devon and Bubba as far as wrestling wise, which I thought was like really cool. Like, and it's funny because when I wrestled in ROH, I used to always get Devon chants, even though we don't look the same, but all blacks look the same or whatever. But when I fought Tommy Dreamer, what was funny about that was people were giving him ideas and stuff that weren't like really on point for the match. And I didn't agree with it. And I'm like, yo, that doesn't make sense. Like there was and it's not to blast anybody, but just to give you some perspective. It's the last match of the year. There's going to be 3 months off. It's the end of the year. There should be no storylines during the time we're not wrestling. So after the match, somebody was supposed to come in and jump me. And I said, that doesn't make sense because the storyline won't go on for another 4 months. People are not going to remember that. I'm fighting Tommy Dreamer. The last thing should be Tommy Dreamer in the middle of the ring and the person I was feuding with. Because originally it was Judas versus Tommy Dreamer. I ruined the opportunity for Judas by taking him out. And then Tommy Dreamer's like, wait. You don't put this guy through a table. These people demanded to see a match. I'm having a match with you. So then what happens is I fight Tommy Dreamer. And then the Judas comes in and costs me the fight where Judas and Tommy are in the middle. So that should be the end. It's the end of the year. They wanted to have my tag team partner jump me at the end. And it didn't make any sense. But, I'm getting grief because I'm voicing how this doesn't make sense. But when they told that to Tommy, Tommy's like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, and they're like, all right. Anyways, what was cool about Tommy was at that point, I was so confident in my abilities. I knew I could lead. And not to say he's a vet and he should be leading the match. But I did my homework. And when I meant lead, it wasn't about, okay, Tommy, you're going to do this. It was to give him things that he's done in his career over and over so he could do his moves on me. Put myself in positions so by reflex, he knows, okay, I do this move when somebody's in the corner like that. So to do that. And what was funny was because prior to the match, a lot of people were like, he didn't feel comfortable about the situation. That's what I gathered. Like, oh, look at these fucking amateurs. It's going to be one of those nights, blah, blah, blah. So I remember asking him before, I said, hey, is it possible that we could work in the crowd? He's like, nah. Let's just stick in the ring. And the way he said it was, no, I don't trust you motherfuckers. Let's just have a very decent match and call it a day. So when the match starts and he comes out and he throws his punch, I do my best Terry Funk imitation to let him know that I'm willing to give. So when he threw that punch, I did my Terry Funk chicken walk, and it popped him. He grabbed me. He said, okay, kid, let's go into the crowd. And it was on. So that was cool. And I'm sorry to be long-winded, but 21 years. My best tag team match, honestly, was the Bone Collectors versus Team Tight. The first time Team Tight got together. It's on YouTube. I liked it because the tag team was crisp, the synergy between the teams, the synchronicity of everybody involved, all the moving parts. That was cool. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, but I'm going to be truthful. You guys winning the tag team titles against us for a couple of reasons. You guys were so hot. The crowd was so behind you. We were having good chemistry. The fact that you guys didn't know that you guys were going to win the titles was a secret pop for me. The shock on your face was priceless. And how loud the crowd popped when you guys won. So, I always remember that. That's what I have always connected in our matches. We had some tag team matches. We had the singles. But the look of what the fuck went on. And I'm like, you guys won. So
I remember that match after... I remember the finish. The finish was that I was going to go for a submission and you're just going to reverse it. It was going to be an head and arm choke. And you were just going to reverse me for kind of a roll-up pinfall, 1, 2, 3. And then you guys are going to, run away with the belts and into the sunset. It was in December, the last show before Christmas.
Yeah.
And I remember hitting you. And you went down, and I was like, he's not supposed to be in this position. I'm like, he's always in position. I was like, what? Okay. So I pinned you. I'm like, hey, where's the hard cam? I got to face the hard cam. And you whispered into my ear, you went, congratulations. Or I was like, wait a minute. And then that's when I heard the ref count 3. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I fucked up.
And I held you. I don't know if you realized, but I was holding on to you. So
I know.
Because I didn't want you to pop up.
I was like, okay, he's going to kick out here. Oh, fuck. And you were like, you grabbed me, you held on to me, and you're like, congratulations. And I remember pushing myself off of you and scouring to the corner. And I remember Mustafa just had his arms in the air.
He's like, I don't know if this is a mistake, but I'm enjoying this.
He was facing the crowd. He had his arms in the air. He was selling. He turns to me. I'm in the corner. They hand the belt over to me. I'm sitting down. He comes up to me. He goes, what the fuck just happened? I'm like, I have no idea. I said, just act like you belong. I said, I think we got this. And we're just like, yeah. And I'm like, that's when I realized, I was like, wait a minute. This is what it's supposed to be, Because I think the ref that was in the match also when he handed me the belt was like, you deserve this or something.
No, you won this because I didn't want any confusion. So and that's why I also didn't tell the referee until we got in, because I didn't want him to be worried or confused during, or even give you guys an idea. I didn't want you guys to have any clue, because I wanted that realism of I just won the fucking belts.
Yeah.
Because that translated. Do you understand? So
100%. And I think the fact that we were hot at the promotion at Torture Chamber, and that and that we were working at a different other promotion as well, and we were just sharpening our skills and stuff, and we had been feuding. This was our I think it was our second or third match already as tag teams against you guys, against the Bone Collectors, and there was just this chemistry. Me and you had been in the ring together. And number one, when for me and Mustafa was, I remember going like, oh, every time we have a match where Drew is involved, it's like there's such a relief, because you have this as wrestlers, not just students, but as people that respect the business. You go, I respect who he is. I trust 100% the worker he is, and that he's gonna have control of the match. There's, all you have to do is fucking remember your spots and just enjoy the show. And I got to enjoy those matches with you because of that aspect. Yeah, like I remember when we started doing bigger shows, just like you, because I had been from the early on, when you get the Torture Chamber rub, that's a real fucking thing. I remember walking into a locker room the first time as a tag team, which was my third or fourth match. Yeah. And I remember people going like after the match, like, there's no way you've been doing this for 3 weeks or 3 months. Yeah. This is your third match. Also, people gave us a different, they treated me anyway, different, because it was like, oh, where you came from. They understood that who you were, how you conducted yourself, how you train your students, and it made our lives so much easier. So I remember when we were in a match with you guys, when we were feuding, I enjoyed those matches so much. Not that I enjoy my other matches, but I enjoyed them because there's less of a like, well, are we leading or are they leading? Like, I knew it was like, just let Drew, lead. He's the guy here, and if things go, like I said before, if things go
which south, never did. It never did. Not to brag. Never did.
And those matches, I got to. The more I went into my career, the more I was able to just be my character in the ring and not have to worry about the spots. You know what I mean? Like, after a while of just rinse, repeat, you go, well, if we miss a spot, you just you keep going. So
let me ask you something. I want to ask you quick. So if I get a shot to go to Bloodsport, you're gonna face me?
We can talk about it. We could talk off camera about it. Yeah,
have you seen the product?
I have seen the product. It might be, it might be an interest of mine, but we'll talk. If you can get us there, it'd be hard to say no. Let's just put it out.
Of course. All right. So what other questions you want to ask me, man?
Look, after such a long wrestling career, 30 plus titles, I mean, I could go up and down the list of matches. You just named any of those matches. Any regrets?
Yeah, tons of them. you know when people like, I've gotten to where I've got, and it was hard, and there was trials and tribulations, but I can say right now there's no regret. I got fucking tons of regrets. Okay, here we go. Let's go. So no. Honestly, I wish what I knew earlier. I wish I had a coach like me to get my ass, in thing. The only regret I might have a little bit, and it's what defines me. I love helping people, and I will continue to help people. Yeah. But sometimes I find I help people more than I help myself, and it's funny because Finn Balor has a quote of mine that he loves: "No one's gonna help you more than you're gonna help yourself." And I told him that once, and he rides with that. Like I've heard him quote that on Twitter and stuff, and always giving props up to me and props back to him. But like, the one thing that I remember my mother telling me is like, do things now while you're younger, so it's not a hindrance when you're older. So my thing is, I wish I realized how great my potential was. I wish I knew how great my work ethic was. I wish I knew how great my abilities could have been. And I don't have regrets as far as my career, meaning like I've done a lot, I had opportunities and stuff like that. But like, had I had more insight of my potential, my infinite potential, the things that I would be able to do, and if I could have been, because pro wrestling is a selfish sport, and there's not too many. I can't name another coach that will do what I've done for others without ever thinking about, hey, I should apply this with me. You know what I mean? I've sent so many people to tryouts for WWE, but never once did I send a package saying, hey, look at me. I've sent people, many places, because I felt for two reasons, and I don't regret that, because you do things not for a return, you do things because it's good for your soul. But I'm just saying that if I could spend 80% or 90% on somebody's career, I could spend 50% on mine. There's no, or even higher than that. So I just find that I used to sometimes stop what I was doing for the benefit of others or for the comfort of others. I remember, and this is not just wrestling, it's just in life. Sometimes I wouldn't be the funniest guy in the crowd because somebody else was funny and wanted that shine. I wouldn't do certain things, or like I've given movie roles that I've had to other people because I know that they needed the money more. I don't know other people who would do that. You know what I mean? So like, my regret is that I wish I would have loved myself a little bit more. That's the only small thing. Other than that, wrestling has been a path. Like, there's very few people that could say that they've had the majority of their life and they made money off wrestling. Like, I don't have any other job, and I haven't had any other job for 21 years. Once I decided that this was going to be, and every job I ever had was related to wrestling. If I did movies, which I've had, if I done commercials, TVs, worked as a consultant or on set or as an actor, it was always because how good I was as a wrestler and how it allowed me to transcend into other forms of mediums which would allow me to have a stream of revenue. So, but it's funny that you said it. It's like taking the long way. And right now, currently, there's a documentary being done on me, and the working title, it may not be, but the working title that I have in my head is The Long Way Home. You know what I mean? So when you go home, that's where your piece of comfort is. That's where you got your best food. That's where you get your entertainment. Your friends, your loved ones might be there. So the end game is, I'm getting to a place where I'm going to be comfortable and be good, but I took such a long way in. Like, a lot of people don't realize the average person who got signed to WWE back then, like Kevin Steen, Finn Balor, they put 15 years in. But I'm giving my students within 3 years tryouts at WWE. That's crazy. Yeah. You know what I mean? So all to say that opportunities are there that wasn't there before. I wish I hustled, but I didn't know how to direct my hustle. Do you understand? It's like, okay, there's a big forest. I got to chop my own path, because when I started to wrestle, these opportunities and these lanes these roads weren't paved. It wasn't even Montreal potholes. It was just wildlife. So I didn't have GPS. I didn't have a map. I said, okay, let me just chop over here. Okay, well, maybe over there. Whether I wish I had more of I knew who to contact, or I knew how to talk, because then I'd be more relentless. So that's the only regret that I have. And also, to be real, I missed a lot of weddings, not mine, and friends. And there's a lot of stuff. Like, wrestling as a passion, if you're not careful, is all consuming. And because I put all my love in pro wrestling, at times, like, wrestling shouldn't be the only thing in your life. It could be an important thing in your life, but it shouldn't be the most important thing. And you learn with age and time that the most important thing is your loved ones, your health, your quality of life, and your mental faculty.
Yeah.
If you can take care of that, take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, that's going to help. When you're passionate, you just got to make sure it doesn't blind you. You know what I mean? And at times, if my happiness was dictated on my pursuit of wrestling and in others in wrestling. Whereas, I'm very talented in other things. I just finished my first poetry book. I'm going to be an author.
Oh shit! Look at that.
And
that's awesome.
I'm doing that, and I'm getting back into film and TV, and I'm going to start recording again just for fun in the next coming month. There's so many other aspects of talent that I could have, that I could do. Not to say that I'm forsaking pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling. I've always loved pro wrestling. It's never going to leave. But sometimes you got to give it a breather. And I'm not saying stop. Like, I'm not stopping. Yeah. If anything, because of the pandemic, I dropped 35 pounds. I'm in the best shape, which was great about this whole pandemic thing.
Congrats.
Thank you. It was a lot of the injuries that I had are healing. So it's allowing me to give me a second. And you know this. So it's giving me a second wave. I'm not going to go and do anything crazy like running, but I'm going to, you know what I mean? So stuff. So those are the only like minor regrets. But and I say minor, like that's it. If I had to be truthful with myself, I would do things a little bit different, like have more of a game plan. And that's what I would tell anybody. Do your homework about everything in any aspect, have a game plan, and follow it consistently and objectively and intellectually.
If me and you are sitting down in 10 years from now, side by side, we're at a table and we're talking about life, what do you think we're talking about in 10 years?
How you beat me in Bloodsport and I want to rematch. It's going to be like a Rocky Apollo thing. Come on, Stallion. Come on, Savage. One more round. No. I'd probably be like, yo, look how tall and grown your kids are. Or I'd be like, because when we talk, we don't usually talk. We don't usually talk wrestling. Usually when we interact with each other, it's always about life outside of wrestling, which is refreshing and it's good. Like when I went to your wedding, which I was blessed to be invited to, thank you. We didn't talk wrestling. The whole time was just having a good time and chilling and enjoying that time. So I think we're going to be probably, if anything, it'd be like you telling me all the students you had to beat up in your school. Because you know what I mean, they weren't pulling in line. Like you'd be like, how did you deal with this certain spectrum of trainees? And I'd be probably giving you advice on that. So that's what I'm thinking 10 years from now. When you open your own dojo and then you're like, I respected you before, Drew. Now it's a whole different level. I understand what you had to go through.
It's I used to think a lot more about the future when I was younger. You're like, I had all these dreams. I felt entitled to a lot of them, and It wasn't like I've stated many times before. It wasn't until the path that I went into after martial arts that I really learned that I couldn't be so entitled to all these dreams. I really had to work for them, and that's when you start filtering. Well, I don't really want to be this. I don't really want to do this. I don't want to really be this. And I look at myself now. I'm 39. I'm going to be 40 in a few days, and like you, maybe not, but I think you might agree with this because you might relate to this. I've been on the go, like forward, push through for 10, 15 years now. I rarely stop and look back and go, holy shit, I've accomplished. Like, I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, I haven't done enough. I need to do more. What's next? And when everything shut down in February, I was dealing with my, God only knows how I think at this point it was a 7th or 8th concussion. And I wasn't in a good place. I was not in a good place. And because my body, for some fucked up reason, decided like to go like, there's nothing working right now. Like, Your mental is I'm gonna attack your mental, and then I'm gonna attack your physical. So when we were all forced to stop, and my body was forced to not go out on Saturday and put my body through what I was going through. Number one, it took me 4 solid weeks for the nerves or the anxiety of wrestling from Thursday to Saturday, because that for me was the recipe. Thursday, I'd start thinking about my match on Saturday.
Yep.
And Friday, it was even more. And
Yep.
then ideas. Saturday, you show up, you perform.
Yep.
Sunday, you fucking chill. Or Sunday, you go back and you wrestle again.
Yep.
And then Sunday night, you chill. And then Monday, like, listen, if there's something about you that you said earlier that I implore you for, is that for 21 years, you've been a pro wrestler / actor / many things, but 9 to 5 jobs for you ain't a thing. I have a 9 to 5 job because I have other responsibilities.
Yeah, of course.
And I understand.
And there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5 job. I'm just saying,
at all.
I made this my 9 to 5.
And when we were all forced to stop, and my body was like injured, and it wasn't until then, 4 years in, like let's be honest, I've only put 4 years, but I also put 10 years of martial arts into my body.
Of course.
And that's when my body started talking to me and going, here's how you really feel. And things started coming out where I was like, I didn't realize this was hurting. I didn't realize this was also hurting. So when the concussion issues slowly started going away, and I started training again and again, there was a part of my brain that went, well, listen, you're feeling great. Physically, I've never felt any better. And then people were like, well, yeah, dude, you don't go out on Saturday, put your body through hell. And don't get me wrong, I missed the fucking shit out of wrestling.
Of course.
But man, the being able to do what I just did there, run the marathon, it hurt my legs, but my back. You run, it takes a fucking physical toll, not just mental but physical.
So what's your question? Your question is if I feel like quitting now?
No. I'm just kind of making a relation point of like with this pandemic. I guess we were all forced to stop and kind of like. I was given a time to reflect on the 4 years. You have 21 years in here. Like, did this pandemic give you time to reflect? Enough time, I guess, to reflect on the whole time, or is it something that you're just so focused on what's next and what's coming up for you?
I think, first of all, something about me, those who know, like really know me, I'm never impressed with anything that I do. I'm not, and I think that's what spurns me. I never take time to smell the roses. I never. Like, I have to like force myself to sit down and go on Google and then see like all the things written about me to be like, oh yeah, like I'd be more impressed with me if it wasn't me. Like, meaning if I wasn't the person. If I was somebody else looking at that, I'd be like, oh fuck, he did this, he did that, he's done this, he's done, wow. But because of me, I don't get that. And before the pandemic, I was beat up. My body, I was at 330 pounds. I had a whole bunch of injuries that's been plaguing me for years. I was stressed. We had the big show, the Montreal Mayhem show, so that was on my mind. And at that time, I had it in my head by September, I'd be done from wrestling. I would retire. The next big September show I would do would be the show that, without telling anybody, at the end of the show, I'd have been like, oh yeah, by the way, peace, I'm out. So that's what I was gearing to, because for the last 3-4 months, wrestling wasn't fun. I was so preoccupied. When I won the fifth time British Commonwealth Championship against Genesis, which was a good match, strap match, I was so preoccupied. I forgot to take off my T-shirt. Like, usually I have the one with the sleeves on.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a full T-shirt in that match. I forgot. My brain was so scattered and everywhere, and just like wrestling for me wasn't fun. Whereas no matter how busy it is to be a promoter, a booker, and wrestling, at least when I get into the ring, that's the fun part for me. That's the, and the camaraderie. And honestly, I get off on everybody enjoying to come to perform at the shows. But at that time, I was just like, I'm done. I'm tired. There's nothing left. I'll still be in wrestling in some kind of capacity, but the physical aspect. And the thing is, because of certain events, I wasn't expected to become the champion. I didn't have that in the cards. It's just because of injuries and situations. So part of me felt like, okay, I'm obligated to get this belt over to be the face of this promotion. And another part of me is like, I don't have anything left in me, and I've done everything. There's only 2 or 3 things on my bucket list left that I need to do, or I feel I need to do. But if I don't do them, I'm okay, I think, or I should be okay.
Yeah,
but
that's the thing, though, right? Like,
yeah,
you want to
because
sell yourself. You might be okay if you don't accomplish those things, but from my experience, the things that I was so excited to accomplish that I ended up accomplishing, I always there's a huge part of me that always regret trying or not.
Yeah, I'm competitive
figuring it
like
out.
that. Yeah, so when the pandemic hit, first of all, I got into a deep depression because I was like, everything shut down. I didn't know what was the situation. I didn't know what was going on. I read too many conspiracy books. I was just like, But then after like 3 months or 4 months in, I said, you know what? I'm at the dojo. It's my dojo. The reason why I had a dojo wasn't necessarily at first to train people, but for a place for me to train. So I said, you know what? Let me train. And I just saw Mike Tyson comeback video, the first one that came out, and I'm like, if dude is in his 50s and he and a millionaire, because once you're a millionaire, there's no wants. It's very hard. I always heard this quote. It's very hard to get up and run 5 miles a day when you sleep in silk sheets.
Yeah.
Once you have everything that you want and you've proved yourself, he has nothing left to prove. But yet the competitive spirit in him is telling you, a warrior, a old lion, you got one more hunt. So I was like, you know what? Even if I'm going to retire, which I'm not going to now, so for all my detractors, you almost had me. You know what I mean? But I'm going to train to the best of my abilities. So then that's what I did. I did like 3 hours a day, watch how I ate, and from 330 I went down to 292, and now I'm hovering around 295. And because the layoff, it gave me an opportunity, a perspective, and regardless of whatever I want to do, I want to be able to do it right and finish off on a good note, because I don't want, like you said, I don't want any lingering, I should have done this. Like, for my bucket list now is to go back to Japan one more time. There is one title that I've always wanted, and if I can get my hands on that, I think I'd be okay to retire. I probably wouldn't, but if I had this one title, I'd be like, okay. But definitely, I want to start going back on tours. Like, I've already started working. Australia is going to be the next place I do seminars. And I just want to wrestle and have fun and just enjoy. So, that's about it. But at 21 years, I've done everything that I could possibly do, I feel. You know what I mean? At this time. So I'm just trying to figure out now, what can I do that gives me interest? Because the thing is, like I said, we're sharks. If I don't know what I want to eat next or where I want to travel, then I'm just lost. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That I completely understand what you mean, because for me, there always has to be, I always have to have a goal. I don't care if it's wrestling related. It could be this podcast. It could be that run that I just did. It could be anything. Like my wife, right after I finished running, obviously she asked me, she's like, so what's next? She's like, because I know there's something next. Like, what is next? And I'm like, I don't know yet. Let me enjoy this accomplishment. This is something 30 days ago that I had no idea that I was going to accomplish. I just felt that I needed to accomplish. I thought that I was a point in my life where at this point right now, I need to accomplish something really, really hard, because it's probably like that for you too. Like, I just sometimes need a reminder that I'm a bad motherfucker.
Hell yeah.
Like, like sometimes one thing that this because for me the pandemic for us our family look, I wish it could be a pandemic every fucking 5 years because it turned our little family of four into a tighter group. We became a strong unit, and I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed spending time with my family, enjoyed spending time with my wife. We kind of shed all that negative bullshit that wasn't necessary in our life,
Yep.
and we started building this team of let's write down our ideas. I have ideas I want to do. I want to build this podcast like I want, and I asked my wife's input, and we sat down and we and the same thing with her. She had her own dreams and her own goals, and we sat down and we made a plan and we helped each other.
Amazing.
And kids the same way, right? And it's always like, if there's always something that I can aspire to become or do, I'm good. I'm good as long as I wake up in the morning and I have gazelles to go chase. You know what I mean? Like I need to feed today. But one thing that it also gave me is that it also gave me a different perspective of like, okay, well, like how, like I said earlier, like, like as much as like you said earlier, I ain't no fan of mine. Because every morning I wake up, I go, I ain't done enough. I need to do more. But other people, like after my run, for me, the run was like, I wish I could have finished faster. I wish I could try it again because
but dude, you inspire people. Like I can't do that. Do you understand?
Yeah, no.
And I'm a monster. So I was impressed with that. I was like, oh fuck, this guy's running just to run. Like I'll run if I'm being chased by the cops or I gotta save somebody. But to just get up now, like I don't have that in me. Like I don't mind. I can train all day, but I'm training all day for a purpose. Like it's hard for me to just train. So, and those are my comfort zones. Like I've never heard you say, you know what, I'm gonna run a marathon. I would be like, what? Save your knees? Why, dude? Not to hate, but I'd be like, what? Oh, you must love abuse. You're savage for real. So even though you may not be impressed, and that's a fault. That's a trauma default that I think I have. Is like you're never impressed with anything and you don't see it. That's not good. You have to find the good in everything. Do you understand? Because I can do it with other. Like if I can see you and say, hey, that's good, why can't I see it in myself? Why doesn't my reflection show? So we got to learn, because, and there's some people who are the opposite. They have no problems to tell, you know how great I am? I ran 2 blocks. What? I ran 2 blocks. I'm the fucking man. I'm the best. Worship me. You know what I mean? So
it's the same thing you said earlier. A lot of these people that have this over
confidence. It's like ultra confidence.
You're like, I've been training for 2 weeks. I'm good to be in the ring. And you're like, man, you have no business being in that ring. I've been doing this 12 months and I still don't think I'm good. I don't understand how you after 2 months. It's like you obviously different perspective, right? They think that they're there when they're not there. It's like kind of an internal mechanism.
Or, let me ask you this, or they know exactly who they are, but it's self-hypnosis. They, like Ali said, he was the greatest before he realized he was. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So maybe they're on a better. Imagine we who are talented had that mind state. There'd be nothing we couldn't do. Because if you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm so fucking great and I'm going to do greater stuff. Can you imagine the shit you'd be doing? But we don't have that. And, so maybe they're onto something that we don't know.
You're absolutely right. Maybe we would own everything if we had that.
Exactly. Imagine if I woke up, I've done great for the 21 years and for the next 21, I will be epic. Let it start now. You know what I mean?
And then there's a part of me that goes, I'm still happy that I got all the all the heartbreaks, everything. All
it defines you, it shapes you.
Because at where I'm at now, it's like I see it. You know what's funny, and I think this might sound thing, but I think this is something you can relate to.
All right.
So during this pandemic, I started listening to I subscribed to Audible. I don't like reading but I'm a guy of knowledge. If I can input new knowledge on a daily basis, that's why I love podcasts, because I can listen to 3 podcasts in a day. It could be sports, it could be anything else, as long as I learn something. So I started listening to these audiobooks, and I had all these credits on Audible, so I would just pick and choose the books, and I some inspirational books, and then there was a lot of these, like whatever you want to call them, like self-improvement books, that were highly recommended, or like the first one I listened to was the David Goggins book, which is a book that I bought for.
Yeah, you got it for me. I have that. Yeah.
I mean, I could listen to that book all day. I've listened to it. So many tools. I'm so inspired by that man. But then recently I downloaded this book, and it was, so many reviews, and it's supposed to be this super inspiring, super helpful book. And I was listening to it, and I told my wife about it, and she asked me, she's like, "So how's the book?" And I was like, I got halfway through, and I realized that I needed that book 5 years ago. I don't need that book today, because all of the things he's saying, I'm applying it already in my life. And I'm like, it kind of made me realize that, holy shit, like the growth, I did drag this carcass a long way. And along the way, I shed a lot of those fucking scabs that didn't need to. And then I was able to grow into this person I am now. And I actually have accomplished, even though I was never a professional fighter. I got in the cage, I got in the ring, I was boxing, I learned, I grew. Even though I haven't made it to the WWEs and the ROH, I was 7-year-old.
Yeah, but I just want to say something. This is all I'm going to say. It's not that you don't have the ability to do it. They just don't know who you are. So I would suggest that I
understand that. Yeah.
All you need to do is keep trekking. If that's the choice that you want to do, is only a matter of time. And I'm saying that not as a friend. I'm just saying that from a coach's perspective, because, like I said, like the one thing about me that people have noticed, and I've noticed, I know how to spot talent. I know when there's good talent. And being a guest coach at the WWE Performance Center, I saw people that were good, but I also compared them to the people that I knew back here. Mm-hmm. So I saw people that I'm like, yo, Stefan could do this. Mustafa could do this. Flo could do this. Like there was certain, people, and not to knock them, not to say that they weren't good enough, but if they reminded me of you, then you could have, so it's really about opportunity.
It is. And it's one thing, that's the business of professional wrestling, right? And it's of entertainment in general is sometimes just the luck of the draw of who sees you.
True, but you know what? It's almost like a political candidate. In order for you to get nominated in whichever job that you're looking for, you got to hit the towns. You got to let people know. You got to have spin doctors with you. You got to have media specialists promoting you. So that way, when you get there, so when it's time to vote, they know who you are. And that's something that I learned.
Yeah.
Early.
There's a part of the business that has to be 100% on you, and that you have to hustle and grind to make sure people hear your name, know your name, see you. Because one thing you said early on in my career is like, you never know who the fuck is sitting in that crowd. Ever. Dude, ever.
I got WWE tryout because Pat Patterson was in the crowd. And he said, who's that guy? And he came up to me. He's like, how come I didn't know about you before? And so that told me, hey, I should have been out there. So people also, I got my first championship. Smith Hart was in the crowd, saw me and said, hey, who's this kid? I'm going to take him there. Sonny Warcloud saw me at a show and said, hey, I'm going to take you to Quebec, and you're going to start doing wrestling there. Marquez, what's his name? Anyways, he was the NWA New Japan vice president. David Marquez. David Marquez was at the NWA 57 annual anniversary. Sorry. NWA 57 anniversary show, and he saw me and Finn Balor and invited us at the Inoki Dojo. And also, who's that guy that's in the tag team? He's in Impact Wrestling right now. Anderson.
Carl Anderson.
Yeah. He was at the same show. So it's so, you never know who's going to be there, and that is so true. That's why you have to conduct yourself as a professional inside and outside.
If you could give any tidbit of information to help out future or current wrestlers, the number one thing, what would it be?
Come to my school. No, okay, no. That's a given. No, honestly, believe in yourself, have a commitment to excellence, and it sounds cliche, but your excuses are your own. Like you just gotta put in the work. If you put in the work, you cannot be denied. They may not let you in, but they know of you. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You can't be denied. You know what I mean? And in this game, or in any game, it's all about how much money they can make. Who doesn't want to make money off somebody that has talent? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So it's all about believing in yourself, confidence. If there's one thing, if I can go back to 18-year-old Dru Onyx, I'd be like, yo, dude, believe in yourself. Because, you know what I mean? Like, once again, at that time, there was no internet, or internet was just starting out. It didn't have all these, go to a wrestling school. You can go online, type in wrestling school, and 1,000 wrestling schools come out. It wasn't like that before.
No.
You know what I mean? So I had to hustle harder and have direction. So I would have been like, yo, do your homework. I learned how to study later in life. Learn how to study now. Anybody who's in school or at work, learn to listen. Listening is key, because when you're listening, you absorb knowledge. An application of knowledge is wisdom. So
be coachable.
Fucking right. And you know what's funny? The word coachable is not a word. It's a made-up word. I checked online to find out the word. Coachable.
I use it with my kids when I coach my baseball team.
No, but everybody uses it.
I learned from you. I've never heard that word before. I didn't even know what you meant when you said be coachable. I was like, oh, it's so simple. Yes, be fucking coachable.
And I've heard that from other people. But then when I went to go into like the dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary, there's no word called coachable. So, but in all things, once it becomes something of a norm, then it gets in the word. But, I got that from football, which is funny because the majority of the football terminology seeped in to the coaching at the WWE. So there's a lot of like football references. And coachable was the one thing that you always heard all the time. And I'm like, yeah. So just believe your dreams. And also don't listen to the naysayers, because I find people who critique you are usually people who have failed in their dreams. If you tell me you wanted to go run, I would never tell you, why are you running, da-da-da-da, because I'm comfortable in my own skin. I've attempted. Because sometimes the greatness is not you reaching the mountaintop, but you trying to run up the mountaintop.
Yeah.
That's where the accomplishment is. You are pushing. And so many people will tell you, oh, you can't do this, you're too old, or, you don't this, or you have so many concussions, or what. Fuck that. You want to do that? Do that.
Just do it.
Just do it. And the thing is, they don't realize, because they do realize all the negative connotation is going to affect your performance. And then it makes them feel better, because no person on this earth likes to know that me and Steph were at the same starting race, and now he's there and I'm here. What was different? We had the same pair of shoes. We had the same training. But his will was stronger. His want was stronger. So now it makes me question myself. And then I have to realize I'm insecure. So it's much easier to hate and tell somebody they can't do something because they failed there. So I always say, ignore that crap. If someone tells you don't do it twice. Do it as much, providing that it's not hurting anybody and it's to benefit your dreams. Because at the end of the day, nothing is heavier than you dying with your dreams. It's okay to leave this plane of existence once you know you've left your legacy. And your legacy doesn't have to be large. It's just an imprint. If life is a beach of sand, you don't want to be a grain. You want to be that rock that stubbed somebody's toe. You want to be that piece of glass that fucking cut somebody and they got to get medical attention. Or you got to be that gold coin that's found in that sand. Leave your legacy. And nobody's going to help you do that or want you to do it more than you. So
Look, we can talk forever.
yeah,
I love our conversation because, like again, we're two pro wrestlers, but we can talk about anything. I mean, we could
yeah,
have talked about MMA, we could have talked about
yep.
all sorts of shit, and like I said, we could go on for hours, but unfortunately,
Hey, it's all right.
can't go forever.
It's all good.
I want to thank you for being the first official guest on the La Savage show. I want to thank you
Pleasure.
for just a conversation and just giving me your free time and accepting the invitation. And I'm doing this new thing, and I'm trying to build this platform, and hopefully it goes well. And obviously, having you come again on the show in the future is
Anytime we could talk about it. First of all, it was a pleasure. I hope it was enjoyable and enlightening. I hope people will hit this because I'm on it. And
listen,
what are the
I
two?
knew I when you start a podcast, sometimes you got to go like, okay, who's going to listen to just me talk? So I try to, well, if I have Dru, it's going to help. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm using you, but there's
but
it's a give or take. Like, I'm new to this. People know, a lot more people know who you more than knew you than who know who I am.
Yeah.
So I know that I feel like I have something to offer with this. So I know that somebody might listen to this because they know you, and then they'll go, well, let me see what other episodes they have and who else.
Of course. I'm gonna ask you a few questions now. Where'd you get that fucking booming T-shirt? Where did you get that? That is a hot ass T-shirt. I already have a jacket and pair of sneakers that can go well with that. Where'd you get that?
I got this at a record store.
Crazy.
I got this. I walked into, I forget the name of the record store, but they were selling these random T-shirts, and they had these Macho Man T-shirts that were like $19, and they were on sale. And I was like, they had like 10 of those. I'm like, I don't understand. They had like all sorts of different movies.
And very quietly, you just got them and you didn't make a fuss about it. You're like, okay.
You find this one. I have another Macho Man. It's a blue. The only one they had left was a small. And it's a tight T-shirt, but I'm like, it was $5.99. And it was also at a record store in Fairview here on the West Island. And I'm like, I don't care if I don't fit it in now. I'm buying it. I'll give it to my son. It was just a picture of Macho Man from like the 80s. It was on a blue bright T-shirt. I was like, I love this T-shirt. And I got it at a record store like this. So yeah.
Amazing. And what are the two plaques that you have behind you? One is Tag Team of the Year, and what's the other one?
Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling 2018 the Vanguard Award presented to Stefan Paulson for your outstanding contribution and achievement in the sport of professional wrestling.
Look at you.
Underneath, I got the Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling 2019 Tag Team of the Year, Stefan Paulson, Mustafa Jordan, the Night Train Express. You know, I won this in 2018, and not that the tag team won.
I hear you. No, I totally understand you.
This here
means
more about my character than this here, because this is given to me from you because of how I conduct myself when I'm not at your school.
Yes. And your performance and other people, and just the fact people put titles on you, it's because they know your potential or your ability. So, and even though you wrestled elsewhere, you still represent the mind state and the mentality of Torture Chamber. Are we still on? Or this?
Yeah. Listen.
Okay.
I'm gonna say this, and this is not a knock on anybody, but when I walked into my first mixed martial arts gym and I started training and I committed myself to learning this new art and I told the coaches, this is my goal, I want to be a fighter. They started investing their energy and time into me. I became part of their family. It happened at Combat Arts Academy in Mississauga. It happened at Sherbatov MMA here in Laval. It even happened at TriStar for a short period of time. It happened when I walked into Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo. You, other coaches from other schools invested their time, their energy into me. They put their name on my back, on my shirt. The last thing, the one of the only thing and the most important thing that I can do when I go out there is not only represent myself, but represent the people that invested their fucking time and energy, and be respectful of that person, of those coaches, of that school. So because I know that someone is going to not only judge me on who I am, but if they really think that I'm good, they're gonna ask me, how did you become that good? Who taught you to be that good? Where did you learn that shit? And I'll be like, motherfucker, Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo. You want to become a professional wrestler? Go to Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo. I don't give a shit. You go there, you will never be disappointed. And if you're really willing to put in the work, then you will never fail behind this man.
Well, but that's it.
The same thing happened when I was at Combat Arts. I haven't been to that gym since 2007 because I moved to Montreal. I still rep their shirt. I still rep on social media. I'll still talk to the coaches. I still conversate. I still interact. Same thing with the Sherbatov brother. I still rep their shirt. I still rep their product because they are a part of who I am as a person, as a fucking savage. That's who I am, and it'll be so. That's why that Vanguard Award for how I conducted myself outside of the school and outside of the promotion of Torture Chamber. It's something that I will forever take pride in, and it is something that I think is extremely important in building your character and who you are as a person.
Agreed.
Sir, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, I could thank you for forever and ever, but
pleasure.
Thank you for being the first official guest on Le Savage Show. I appreciate it.
All right.